Hello, gumshoes. As always, we're going to give this a minute just to confirm sound, and then we're going to just jump right in. This is a repeat from Friday night's live. YouTube took the video down. This is the third time that they've done it. So there's no explanation. It's just basically like that I'm sharing personally identifiable information and or encouraging others to do the same. So it's like basically a doxing charge. And that would be like sharing someone's home address, their social security number, their phone number, something like that, which obviously I've never done in a live. I would never do something like that because it would be cruel and unethical. So you're just prompted to like go through your video, like they bring up your video and they're like, okay, so just go through this video and remove any of this doxing material. They don't tell you where it is or anything like that. It's just like, just go through this 2.5 hour long video and find out what you did wrong. It's almost like when you're in grade school and a teacher is like, you just sit there and think about what you did, and you're like, I have no idea what I did. And so anyway, and then you're given the option to submit an appeal, but it's spitting into the wind. You submit the appeal and within a few minutes you get an email letting you know that after a careful review of your appeal, they have decided to deny the appeal. It's clearly completely automated. So the last time this happened, I wasn't exactly sure if maybe there was something in the video because of the content of the video. I had said something about finding information in the FOIA docs, and I thought, well, maybe there's some kind of automated, trip, but also that time I received the notification, like it came in the middle of the night, so I didn't see it. But this time there was a little more than 12-hour delay. So that let me know this isn't automated. It wouldn't take an automated system 12 hours to review your video. In fact, the chat doesn't even go up until the video has been reviewed through their automated, algorithmic system. So this time I was like, what, I think that, I think most likely some of these players are just flooding YouTube with reports. And that's one of the things that you can report. I actually just reported a video last week, but it was because of animal cruelty. And I just kind of took note of the things that you can report a video for. But anyway, so this time I am making a recording of it. I'm also publishing it to the A Murderous Heart Facebook page. And last time the last time I did this and I published to the A Murderous Heart Facebook page, I received a notification from Facebook that someone had reported the video. And so even then I was like, okay, so obviously someone is reporting these videos. But Facebook, I think they actually do a human review, or they use humans for the review, because they never took the video down. So anyway, but this time, I'm creating a video. Sometimes with these longer videos, when I'm recording them just like to my hard drive, they can just stop recording. And so hopefully that doesn't happen. I didn't have a problem the last time I recorded, but also it will, publish to the A Murderous Heart Facebook page. So, and now I just have to remember to always do that because these players are sketch. Okay. Anyway, so having said all that, We're going to go through it again. This time I pulled together a presentation just to kind of tighten things up a little. And I am also kind of pulling out all the stops. There were a few points that I held back last time. And I don't say this like, again, to be spiteful, to be vindictive, but you know, I was like mid presentation and thought, I don't know, I think I'm just going to wrap up there. And I'm not going to do that this time. So there will be a few things that I'll touch on that I didn't touch on in the last video. But the essence of this video is we're going to be talking about Summer Shiflet's role in this whole tragedy. I'm not saying she had an active role in the murders. I do not believe that she did. However, in keeping with multiple family members and not just Cox family members, they did have varying levels of complicity through acts of omission and commission. And I will be going through some of that. We'll get a little tangential at times with points that I think, you know, kind of tie in. There was one discovery I just made today. It's not particularly germane to Summer, but it does tie in to the overall story. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and we will just get started. Okay, so essentially, and let me just take a look here. Oops. Okay, I just want to make sure my screen is showing. Essentially, we're going to be talking about, you know, not only did Summer share Lori's delusions, but did she actually share her murderous heart? And it looks like this isn't showing. So are you guys able to see my screen? I'm just going to check in with the chat because I'm not seeing it. Okay. Okay, great. Great. I don't know why I'm not seeing it, but I will take your word for it. All right. So as always, oh shoot, this is going to be a little cut off. That's okay. I can see the edges of the video, and I should have made it full screen. But as always, you know, I have this petition for Phoenix police to open the investigation into Joe's death. If you haven't signed it, and if you're so inclined, the link is bit.ly Justice for Joe with none of the vowels except for the E at the end. So JSTC, the number 4, JOE. I would be grateful for any participation. We have a lot more than 7,500 signatures at this point, but I made that screenshot a while ago. Okay, let me hide this. Okay, so we're going to kick off talking about Summer's statement about Lori's delusional disorder.
What were your thoughts when Lori gave her statement? It's the first time, I mean, you've talked with her occasionally over the past few years, from what I understand, but first time the public has really heard from her. And what were your thoughts as she spoke about her I guess, version of events or her, what she believes?
I've known she's been in this delusion for a while. It took me a long time to accept that and understand what was going on. I knew something was off from the beginning, but I didn't know what. And I had never seen anybody with a delusional disorder before. I didn't know how to process that or what it looked like. So now that I've had more experience with it, that's about typical of most conversations. It's about her faith, and you'll see one day. There's never any acknowledgement of what actually happened, so you can't ever really get any answers. So it leads to just kind of frustrating situations.
So what you heard, so sorry to cut you off. What you heard today, what was so alarming to so many of, what is she talking about? You're used to this is the Lori you've known. Is that what you're saying?
No, not the Lori I've known. No, she was not like this before. I mean, this didn't start. I think her delusional disorder probably, if we, we've kind of backtracked it back to maybe late 2017 that maybe that started, maybe early 2018 that it started. But she wasn't talking like this then. There were.
Take note of the late 2017, early 2018. We will circle back to that.
Some religious things, but she was cherry picking what she shared with each member of the family. So it took us a long time to come together and like all talk about what we knew and what she had told each one of us. And we all got different versions. So it wasn't ever like a consistent, like everyone got the same exact information. The things today, there were some things today I hadn't heard before. I'd never heard, she's never once told me that she had the near-death experience when she was giving birth to Tylee and left her body and saw my sister Stacy. That has never been talked about ever by her with us. So there were some things that were new to me today, but there were also things that I knew to be true that she was saying, like Tylee's time in the hospital with pancreatitis and her abuse by her father and things like that I was aware of.
Okay, so let's talk about some background here. So the first thing I want to note is that Colby had said in his interview with Gilbert Police that Lori and Alex had reconnected around this same time. So I'll just read it. Colby indicated that he never really had a relationship with Alex. He described Alex as being a bum. Alex would tell him about his relationship with women, and he thought he was nasty. Of course, now keep in mind, these family members had no problem with Tylee being abandoned by Lori and staying with Alex, this nasty bum who went down to South America for sex tourism and had been excommunicated twice and, was pretty unsavory. But okay, back to our regularly scheduled program. Colby added that Alex started to come around more and became super close with Lori around 2018. When asked to describe the relationship between Lori and Alex, Colby started by talking about his knowledge of Alex going after Joe Ryan. He knew that Alex was protective of Lori. Colby felt that Alex and Lori got close really fast after January of 2018. So this is around the same time frame that Summer is saying they started to notice that Lori was becoming delusional. All right. Colby stated that he knew Alex and Charles were cool with each other and that Charles had a lot of praise for Alex. And what do you know? My brother Joe just happened to be found dead at the same time. So Lori reconnects with Alex. That she starts to become delusional. Now, I strongly suspect that part of these delusions were her talking about Joe and him being, whatever it was that, she was really kind of focused on at that time. I've said multiple times, I think that this whole family knows what happened to Joe. I do strongly believe that he was murdered, and I think the whole family knows the details, even with Adam and Rex saying, oh, you know what? I think there might be, some credence to this, Annie might be onto something. No, I just don't believe that. I believe they actually all know. because one, I've talked about this multiple times, and now people have seen this for themselves. Lori doesn't have a filter. Whatever pops into that shallow mind of hers tumbles out of her mouth. And at the time that Joe was found dead, Zach, Colby, and Kelsey were living with Lori and Charles. So she would have been giddy with excitement over having gotten away with this murder. She would have been obsessed. Even when I went out there, that was in May, she couldn't even pretend to like share any of my grief. It was, the world is a better place without Joe Ryan in it. And then even months later, when she met some of these group members, this is their first time meeting Thor, Zulema. She had just met Melanie Gibb right before sharing her testimony at her house. And she's talking about wanting to murder her ex-husband and going so far as to telling the bishop, hey, listen, you're either going to give me a temple recommend or I'm going to murder my ex-husband. And these are with total strangers. So imagine what she said to her actual family members. So, all right. Okay, so now I want to share a little bit of Summer's recorded phone call. This was a couple weeks after the kids' remains had been found on Chad's property. So it kind of sounds like it's like she just found out, but it was, yeah, it was like right around 2 weeks later. Because I think I think she recorded this call on the 20th, and the kids' remains were found on the 9th. Anyway, so I don't want to call into sincerity the emotion that she's experiencing. I will talk a little later on about how she was kind of in a PR mode, because within a couple days of this recorded call, she also wrote a mea culpa on her Facebook page. And so I think, she maybe had some time to process it, but I want to kind of hone in on one particular detail that she talks about, and that is when Lori cut her off. And in fact, to some degree, she seems almost more upset about Lori cutting her off and then even about the kids being murdered. Like, the kids being murdered wasn't really the focus of this call. It was more that they were found on Chad's property. And I believe for this particular family that kind of fancied themselves as some kind of Mormon mafia, like they just talked so openly about death, about like murdering people. And we'll see. I mean, Summer participates in this. There is saber rattling between her and Lori, almost like who's the most sketch, who's the most gangsta, who's, hitman is the most careful, because they both had their own hitmen and stuff. And so I personally feel, and I really try to be fair in my analyses, and I try to avoid hyperbolic statements or like exaggeration. But it almost comes across as like, I have the sense that this family was more mortified that the kids were buried on Chad's property than that they were murdered. I think even when Summer and Janice went public in their support of Lori a month before the kids were found, and I'll make this point later in the presentation, I don't think that they made that showing because they actually thought that the kids were alive. I just don't believe that for a second. I do believe that they thought, they're in Idaho, they'll never find them. They have thousands of miles of open terrain of, like Yellowstone Park, of in just the thousands, millions of places they could have buried the kids. And I suspect that if I had been a fly on the wall in the Cox family on June 9th, I think their shock and horror was that they were stupid enough to bury them on Chad's property. And I remember even when Chad submitted a permit to have a trailer put on his property. And I don't mean this as like a humble brag, a bunch of us were in a Facebook group. And I remember when that news broke, I was like, oh my gosh, they are on his property. I mean, just immediately, I was like, there is only one reason he would be investing money while Lori's in jail. And I think she had just been extradited to Idaho, maybe. But anyway, he had to know his day was coming. He should have been saving his money and to pay for legal expenses. And he's making plans to buy a trailer and have it installed on his property. But anyway, so I don't know that the Cox family would have been that astute. Well, that sounds self-aggrandizing, but anyway, but I think they were most horrified. And Summer couldn't say, like, she knew that this was a recorded call. She couldn't say, you freaking morons, what were you thinking burying them on Chad's property? But that is kind of the emphasis of the call. That aside, where I'm going to focus is on some of the statements that Summer makes about being abandoned by Lori, and I try to figure out at what point did Lori cut her off, and then also why.
You know me, Summer. That's what I thought. You still do. Lori, if you let that happen to them and didn't tell us and left me in the ground like a piece of trash, then I don't know you, because you would have never done anything like that. That's correct. And if you knew and didn't tell us, that's not okay. You didn't do it. We would have taken them. We would have taken care of them. You could have gone on and done anything you want.
I will address this point of her saying that they would have taken the kids.
That's what you think? I told us anything. We believed you. We stood up for you. I did not. I would love to. You caught me and Mom off for 4 months and told everyone not to trust us because then we tell Adam.
Okay, tuck that away. I'm just going to rewind it.
Not to trust us because.
Oh, whoops. Sorry.
You know me, Summer. But there's zero explanation and you expect me to just keep it out. We find this out and you expect me to just keep going on faith when there's been zero explanation and you expect me to just keep believing without ever having a question. Say that. That's what you're saying. Either explain it or don't expect me to not be upset and doubt you when the kids are on Chad's property. I'm not okay. Oh my heart. I would have taken Tylee and JJ in a heartbeat, and everybody else would have too. You know that. If they were in any danger, I have no idea what happened. You're right. Nobody does because you said nothing. Because everybody sees what's on TV. That has nothing to do with TV. This is about your and my conversations before you left and cut me off. And now you expect me to be there for you when you were going to abandon me? And if you weren't in jail, you wouldn't even be talking to me and we wouldn't even know they were dead still. This is your opinion? Yes! I deserve more than that. I've been there for you like a rock, and I went on TV and defended you. I've done everything to defend you, and I still would right now if you would tell me the truth. I would love to. Well, then, love to. You didn't want to in October, November, December, January or February, when you weren't in jail, why didn't you tell us then?
Okay, I want to address her statement that she would have taken the kids. In fact, she circled back and said she would have taken them in a heartbeat. Again, don't want to be cruel. However, they had the opportunity. They had the opportunity with Tylee, and they didn't. But also, we don't know everything that Lori told them. However, you could see, even in this text exchange that she had with Charles, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. This was just a couple weeks before he was murdered. And they're arguing back and forth. You can pause the video, read it if you're so inclined. But I want to point out, on June 28th, she says to Charles, "Wow, you make me out to be pretty powerful to do all that. What exactly would my motivation be? ... More babysitting time?" This shows a clear disconnect, a severing of whatever bond she had with JJ at one point. It had been severed to the point that she begrudgingly took JJ back and moved to Arizona. Charles was paying her expenses for her to do this, but she saw it as like a babysitting service. She was this bond, this tie had been severed, and the family had a front row seat to it. Like, she didn't just throw Charles' stuff away. She threw JJ's stuff away. His clothes, she took off with something that he needed, like something that Bailey needed. It was like a special collar and all of these things. And the family saw all of this. They also saw that she completely took off and abandoned JJ for 72 days. And we know it was 72 days because Charles documented it. And that's how I know when Lori got back together with Charles, which was just, according to Melanie Gibb, to put his finances in order in hopes of being able to murder him. But 72 days, she abandoned her son, but she abandoned Tylee also for months. And I'm just going to play this. This talks about it, because this is an absolutely bizarre statement that Janice made in one of her interviews. And sometimes in these interviews, it'll be little things like this, or seemingly little, where if you just, like, if you're a parent and you put on your parent hat, you're like, what in the world? Who says something like this? Okay.
2020 spoke to Janice Cox a month before JJ and Tylee's bodies were found.
Adam told us that he was really worried about Lori. He didn't specify, but he said to me, he said, "Mom, don't you think Lori has some crazy beliefs?" And I said, "No." I said, "I talk to her all the time. She does not have crazy beliefs. She's taking care of JJ. She's just living a normal life."
Okay, it's that little point of she's taking care of JJ. She's living a normal life. Well, first of all, she wasn't taking care of JJ, but not even Janice and Summer in their interviews, not even they can say she was taking care of JJ and Tylee, living her normal life. Tylee was 16. Like, they all knew that Lori had completely abandoned Tylee. She took her to Hawaii on her first trip, and then they came back. April Raymond said once in a Facebook group that they were with her for Valentine's, but then Lori and Melanie Gibb went to a conference. I think it was like February 15th. So they would have left right after that. And from mid-February to the time that Lori went back with Charles, Tylee was left at Alex's house. Alex was a long distance driver, so she was left alone for who knows, days at a time. But then even when he was home, the guy was a total creeper. And this whole family has no apparent issue with the fact that Lori abandoned Tylee, abandoned JJ. They were very different types of abandonment and both incredibly cruel. But anyway, so for them to be like, oh yeah, we would have taken them in, and Colby said the same thing. I'm like, if past is prologue, no, they wouldn't have. They absolutely wouldn't have. Okay, all right.
2020.
All right. My opinion, I think the whole family knew the kids were dead. And I think they knew the kids were dead long before this case went public. And I'm going to make a case for it. I could do an entire live on all of the evidence that indicates that this whole family knew that the kids were dead long before this case went public. But I'm going to point out a few things. Now, some of these, we're going to focus on Colby a little bit, but that's just because Colby was in front of the media more. He was sharing more details. So we know more about like his interactions, more of like the contradictions in claims he made from interview to interview, and then some of the details of the Venmo transactions from the trial. So first point, Colby received almost $6,000 from Tylee's Venmo between September 10th and December 18th. Well, it's 18th or 19th. The guy, the forensic accountant, Michael Douglas, he had said December 18th, but sometimes if it's late at night, I've seen where like my records, because I grabbed a bunch of screenshots before some of these Venmo transactions started disappearing. And this was after Lori had already been arrested. So the only one who could have set these to private would have been Colby. But there is like a day difference on some of the transactions between like what was in the police report. So anyway, let's hear what Michael Douglas had to say.
What else stood out to you in compiling this information?
So after the believed passing of Tylee, this is when both of Ms. Vallow's accounts ceased. And Tylee's account, again, has the new funding source of her BBVA account ending 5794 added, and Colby Ryan being the sole receiver of those funds between the times of September 10th and December 18th. There's a transfer, or 29 transfers totaling $5,940.
And take note of the 29 transfers because I'm going to circle back on that. I didn't realize that there were sirens going on when I was recording this, so there weren't sirens in the around the courthouse.
In your review of finances, were you able to track other occasions when Lori was using Tylee's funds for a debit card?
Yes, ma'am.
What were they?
So as I referred to brick and mortar purchases, there were two purchases at Costa Vida. There was a late payment with the rental company of Blue Sky Property that was made, and also a couple of PayPal purchases that, after research, we found was a transfer of money to, or Colby used that credit card information to buy his birthday present, which ended up being a lightsaber.
Okay, so $5,940 from Tylee's Venmo to Colby's account in just 3 months. 3 months and some change. It's like 3 months and a week. So I calculated she was getting $1,859 a month from SSI times 3. I mean, that's more than what she made in those 3 months. That's more than what she accrued from these SSI payments. So she probably had like a little bit in her account before that, but All of that money was going to Colby. How could Colby have possibly thought that Tylee was alive when he was receiving all of her money? And also, if you remember, when he was being interviewed by Justin Lum, he said something about he started a mentoring relationship with Tylee back in 2018 to help her process her emotions. You don't really see evidence of that in his interviews, because like when the day Charles was shot, he said he walked in the house, Tylee was crying, and he said, "Where's mom?" And he went to the yard where she was. And then the day that he said they stopped to buy his work, he said Tylee was in the car and she was crying and she didn't get out of the car. And so there, you know, again, we don't know all of their communication, but I've also talked about in another live, I strongly suspect that FaceTime call that was made on August 31st was a frantic call. Colby describes it as it was just, they were just living their normal lives. And when we'll hear him talk about that in his interview with Dr. Phil, but there was nothing normal about their lives at that time. Like they were packing up and moving to Idaho. He also talked about how like the call had like gotten cut off. And anyway, so and he lied to police when he was interviewed by Gilbert police, and he said that they left in mid-August. Now keep in mind, at this point, he has no idea that this case is going to balloon and become like a very high profile case. I do think that by November, before the case actually went live, I think he had figured out that this was going to be big, and we'll actually talk about that too. But anyway, so he had lied to Gilbert police and said that they had moved in mid-August and that this FaceTime call, that they were in Rexburg for this FaceTime call. But this FaceTime call, he would have recognized their home, like he had been in their home in Chandler. So it was a very unusual lie. I mean, some people, they'll say, "Oh, I don't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday." Well, you would if someone had been murdered that day, because you go over these details, these facts over and over. So this was significant for him to say that they were in Rexburg. So in my mind, I was like, why would he lie about that? And I suspect that he felt shame about something from that phone call made him feel shame, and he had to distance himself. Like they were already in Rexburg, they're 1,000 miles away. We know that police have copies of his text exchanges with Tylee. I don't know if we'll ever see some of those, but I suspect that call was very frantic, and I suspect that Colby wasn't really, I don't know where this mentoring relationship would have manifested itself, because in the details that we have, and some of the details from him, you just don't see him helping her process her emotions. But for them to have gotten closer during that time, you know, I do wonder if, and again, I don't want to be unfair, but that would have been around the time that she started receiving Social Security payments because her father was dead. And I also suspect that the family would have been nervous about her. I think she was a little bit of a free electron, and I think they were nervous about what she might say or do. Because even when Lori invited me to come out to be a support to Tylee, aside from the one night where she canceled our girls' night out without telling us she was going to do that, and she just said, instead, we're like waiting to leave, and she just came and said she was going to bed. if it hadn't been for that retaliatory action, I wouldn't have had a single moment alone with Tylee. And so I think Lori was guarding our interactions very closely. And so anyway, so I wonder if that's part of the reason for this, so-called mentoring. But anyway, all right, moving on. Just noting, Colby's birthday was October 8th. So he used Tylee's credit card, which was tied to a PayPal account, to buy himself a lightsaber for his birthday. So we don't know what day he made it, but this was in the midst of all of this chaos. We don't know how much he knew, but I do strongly suspect at this point he already knew the kids were dead. And I'll make that case throughout this presentation, just because I do think it's germane to this overall story that I think the entire family knew the kids were dead. But I mean, Tammy was shot at the next day, so. Okay, and this was after finding out on September 8th that Tylee wasn't in control of her money. This was also from Michael Douglas' testimony.
I found throughout my research on September 8th that Colby had requested Tylee to send him a Venmo payment. Venmo being a person-to-person transfer of funds or a peer-to-peer transfer of funds. Tylee responded back that she did not have the funds in her account and that Ms. Daybell was receiving them. Also that date, I wanted to note that Mr. Daybell is searching the wind direction of south-southwest.
I have to say, I was there at the trial for this testimony, and that was just such a staggering point that he made, because here he was saying, okay, this is September 8th, and Tylee let Colby know, hey, I'm not in control of my money. I can't send you money because it's not in my account. And we'll see. Clearly, Lori sent the money to him. But on that same day, Chad was searching wind direction south-southwest. So preparations are being made for Tylee's murder, and she would end up being murdered within hours of this interaction. This interaction with Colby. Just making the point here that clearly Lori did send Colby the money. Now, one thing I just discovered today is Michael Douglas made the point that between September 10th, and he said, again, 12/18, but it's this transaction here, because 12/16, that's too far away, but 12/19, if it had been made like the evening of 12/18, it could have shown up as 12/19. But he had said that there were 29 Venmo transfers from Tylee's account, and that Colby was the sole recipient of these transfers. So today I went through and counted, because in the police report it just says that these were made from Lori or Tylee's account. So all through the timeline, I was like, a transfer was made, unless I knew it was from Tylee, a transfer was made from Lori or Tylee's account. But no, I think it's pretty safe to assume that because these transactions add up to 29, all 29 of these transactions were made from Tylee's account to Colby's account. And this is directly after Tylee had said, I'm not in control of my money. The money wasn't even in her account. But then he starts receiving these payments, which ended up totaling $6,000. Now that's $6,000, or, almost $6,000. That was just from Tylee's account. That doesn't include Venmos from Lori. And then we found out at the trial that there were also Cash App transactions from Lori to Colby. So Colby was making money hand over fist. We don't know exactly how much, but my point being here, there's no way, I just don't think it is at all feasible that he could have in any sincerity thought that Tylee would just be handing over all of her money. I mean, she had to make her own car payments. And she also paid for her phone. And Charles had made the decision that Colby and Tylee would both have to start making their own car payments before he was murdered, because he had an interaction with Adam about that. So there's a very good chance Colby would have known that Tylee had to make these $400 a month Jeep payments. But then also, supposedly he believed that she was in college. So what did he think she was living off of? Okay. All right. Also, Colby had said in this interview with Dr. Phil, he also told Justin Lum this, but he had told Justin Lum that the texts didn't start sounding like they weren't from Tylee until later in October. And so when we all went on the Dr. Phil show, Dr. Phil's producer asked me if there were any questions that I wanted him to ask Colby, which I just thought was so incredibly kind. I will always have just such a deep appreciation for Dr. Phil because he did ask the two questions that I threw out. And one of them was, when did the text messages start to sound like they weren't from Tylee? Because I just thought late October, it doesn't make any sense. That you don't have any suspicion that this might not be Tylee until, at that point, like we already knew that she hadn't been seen since, I don't even think we knew at that point. I think we knew that she was last seen. No, I'm sorry. We did not know at that point that she had last been seen at Yellowstone. So the other question was, when did he last verify that she was alive? And he asked Colby that question too. But when Colby answered the question of when he started to suspect that these texts didn't sound like Tylee, and I'm not trying to trump this up or add undue weight, but it was so shocking to me. And I was on the wings getting ready to walk up on the stage, and I had to fight back the hottest, angriest tears because though his answer to Dr. Phil was more believable, it was still very shocking to me. Okay.
You say the last communication with Tylee were texts, and you say they didn't sound like her.
When she started texting me back a couple of weeks after we had FaceTime,
it was that point right there, a couple weeks after we had FaceTime. So, I'm basically a walking, talking timeline. So I'm on the wings thinking, oh wait, that was August 31st. A couple weeks later, that's mid-September. That's before her birthday.
It just started like not sounding right, like different, exclamations, and just the way she spoke didn't fit her personality.
Okay, so you were FaceTiming up until when?
August 30th was the last time I saw her and JJ together.
Okay, and that was on FaceTime?
Yeah.
How did they sound?
They were normal, and that was the thing. Like, it didn't seem like anything crazy. They were just trying to, live their normal lives, and we just were talking like normal and
just yucking it up,
yeah, exactly.
Chatting and all.
Having a normal conversation.
Again, there was nothing normal about that day. They were moving the next day.
You say the last.
Okay, then he gives specific examples of what didn't sound like Tylee.
All right, well, here's a text exchange between you and Tylee's phone number, at least, and this was on September 28th of 19, which would be like 4 weeks after you last saw them.
And 4 days after Tylee's birthday passed, and obviously no one had any contact with her.
on FaceTime. And Colby, you say, "Hey Ty, happy birthday. I'm so proud of you. I know you have been through a lot. Trust God, it's all going to be okay." Then Tylee says, "Thanks, Colbs. I love you."
She's usually using emojis. So that's kind of the one thing that you can already tell, like, it seems, and it's really quick response.
And so you say, "Hey Ty, are you okay?" She says, "I'm good, just tired. Call you back later. Love you." And you say, "Okay, call me tonight, please. At the movie, I'll call you after." And you say, "Ty, please call me after your movie. I'm worried about you." And she says, "Worried about me? What? I just want to hear you talk."
And I'll just add that Colby added in his interview with Keith Morrison on Dateline, he said 10 seconds is all I need. So by saying, "I just want to hear you talk," and 10 seconds is all I need, he clearly wanted to verify that she was alive.
"Okay, this week was just busy. I'll call you soon." And you're saying this is not the kind of banter you have with her.
Yeah, and the fact that this week is busy, like, what does that have to do with right now? And I just tried to push her a little bit just to get her to call me. It didn't seem like a difficult task. It was so, like, push me away. Every time I asked her to call me, just push her to the side. I'm busy, and that doesn't make sense.
So this is not her.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not your relationship.
It's not a
with her.
relationship, exactly.
What's her relationship with? All right, well, here's
Number 3, there was no sign of trauma in Kelsey and Colby's post the day after the welfare check. No, this was the welfare check that was done at their apartment, which was the day after the welfare check that was done in Idaho. So that was November 26th. Then November 27th, based on a tip from Brandon, Gilbert police went to their apartment looking for Tylee. The next day was Thanksgiving, and this is their post. This is their Thanksgiving Day post. Kelsey wrote, "Riley's first Thanksgiving. I'm so grateful for so many different reasons. Thank you, Jesus, for this life and everything in it." Again, I'm not going to keep saying I don't want to be cruel, although I probably will. I'm not trying to be cruel or just pick on them. This was in that same post. It was just kind of a group picture. It feels a little weird talking about this again because I just talked about this on Friday, but I have to just kind of push through that and operate under the assumption that you're hearing this live for the first time. But I've talked about this in a different live, even from Friday night's live, but I was in foster care when there were very few checks and balances, and abductions were somewhat common. I was abducted twice. And when I was a teenager, I think I was 14, I had a foster sister who was 4 years old. And I loved this little girl. I was basically her mom. I totally took care of her. Her name was Michelle. And she was abducted. And it's one of those moments where you remember where you are because she was missing. We had no idea if she was safe. There were serious concerns with the biological family members who abducted her. That's why she was in foster care to begin with. And I just remember how absolutely devastating that was. And I think, if memory serves me, I think she had been in the home for a little less than a year at that point, so I mean, it's not even like I had a whole life with her, but I just loved her, and I just couldn't imagine the next day just being like, everything's great, like so thankful for this, for this life and everything in it. I mean, even Melanie then Boudreau, when she didn't know where her kids were, and I'm not trying to use her as any kind of example of anything other than she at least showed like more genuine like panic. Like, you know, she even posted a $10,000 reward to find out, you know, like for information leading to their whereabouts, and there were all kinds of issues with that. But I'm just saying, like, that's kind of more what you would expect. Like, oh my gosh, guys, you know, like my siblings are missing, you know, and even if he Colby'd it up, like, please pray for their safety, or, you know, if you know anything, I mean, anything other than, like, I wouldn't expect the next day. And this is the post. They just seem to have like not a care in the world. And my point being here, I think, and again, I don't want to be unfair, but I think part of the reason they were able to kind of roll with these punches is that this wasn't news to them. When I found out Michelle was missing, it was news. It was like being sucker punched. You know, I couldn't believe that she was missing. And by the time they found her, she was 5. I think it had taken like around 9 months. And I mean, she was really, really traumatized when she came back. But you know, their affect just doesn't, to me, communicate like that they just found out something that was truly shocking, that they had no heads up on. Okay. And, you know, it's kind of no wonder that they were so up and positive during the time that all of this was going on. In addition to the Venmos that they were receiving from Tylee, we don't know all of the payments they were receiving from Lori, but in the middle of all this, clearly they're, you know, in financial duress to need all of these Venmo payments. But in the middle of all of this, they have this trip to Disneyland. And if you look at the date, this was just a couple days after Tammy was murdered. And I'm not suggesting that they knew Tammy was murdered. I'm not suggesting that they knew like the details. I am suggesting that I think Lori knew everyone. You know, they say like everyone has their price. And I think Lori knew what that was. And same with Chad. He knew what it was for his kids. He's like handing out cars, a trip to, you know, California. I mean, so I think, you know, Lori and Chad were so careful, just kind of like paying people off and keeping everyone, you know, happy and content so that they could get to their wedding. You know, at this point, this is just weeks. I mean, the kids were already dead. Tammy was dead. It would just be a couple more days that Brandon would find out that Tammy was dead, and then he would tell Kay. And, you know, and then I've talked about this beforehand. I mean, I'm kind of using Colby as an approximation of the rest of the family, but part of the reason for that is that this is a very, very gossipy family, and there was a lot going on. You know, so you know, Colby and Zach were really close at that time. You know, they're not now, but you know, this whole family had to be, you know, participating in these back channel communications, trying to figure out what was going on, while at the same time enjoying whatever benefit that they got from it. It also, Colby on. This was December 12th. So Alex had just died. There's no evidence that Colby knew at that point that Alex had died. But he had this Facebook video where he talked about God calling him to do something big. I'm not going to play the whole thing. I will share the presentation at the end, so you can go back and you can play the whole thing. And you know, I have links to everything or the videos embedded in the presentation, but I'm just going to play a little bit of it. So he also has like kind of this background music, kind of like when he made the video for their GoFundMe, their $20,000 GoFundMe. He also put like kind of similar background music in that one.
So guys, I just felt really strongly that I wanted to come on here really quickly and I felt like one of the messages I've been hearing a lot lately is just remember who you are.
Okay, I'm
Through
gonna
everything that
fast
we've
forward.
experienced, my wife's been really great, a great example of that. I need to be a better example of that. And I think for me, I know God's calling me to do something big. I know He's calling all of us to do something.
Okay, so he kind of has this, almost like a foreshadowing that, God was calling him to do something big. And this has been a bit of a common denominator among some of the family members, of just sort of this infatuation for how big this story was. I remember when Kay and Larry were interviewed, I think it was the first podcast they did, like Larry talked about how this case was going to be so big, it was going to blow Casey Anthony's case away. And he said it would make the Casey Anthony case seem like, this is his quote, Mary had a little lamb. Now, I actually looked up, I compared Casey Anthony with Lori Vallow and Google Trends, which is just a tool that Google has put out that allows you to compare the relative popularity of different search terms. So I put in Lori Vallow and Casey Anthony, and even in the heyday, like when the story first broke, Lori's case never came close to being as popular in terms of the number of searches. So that's what we're using for the metric of, quote, bigness. It didn't even come close. Even at the heyday of like when the case first went public, and then I think when the kids' remains were found, like Casey Anthony's case was still bigger. Like there were still more searches for Casey Anthony than there were for Lori Vallow. But I think there was just kind of this focus on this is going to be big. And I think Colby's interpretation was that like God was going to use him. He was going to make his way into ministry. I know even when he went to Rexburg, he thought that God was calling him to start a church. But a week later, this was on December 19th, he announced his YouTube channel. And it was like very just kind of lighthearted. Like the first 3 videos, they were just about like, like Star Wars figurines and his analysis of some movie that he watched and something else. I forget what, but it was all just like really lighthearted stuff. And I think especially by his, when I saved the first video, it scraped the some like information. So this was the title of it, and this was the URL. The video has since, all of those videos have been taken down, but he actually even added on season 1, episode 1. So I think he thought like he would be able to segue into becoming like a YouTube star. Now keep in mind, this was the same day the Venmos from Tylee stopped. So the Venmos from Tylee stopped. He announces his YouTube channel. The next day, the story goes public. Okay, so all that to say, I think the whole family knew that the kids were dead. All right, also, Summer was a group member. So in I believe this was the Gilbert police report, it said, using these interviews and the data gathered from the above-mentioned warrants, several others who shared Lori and Chad's belief system were identified. Those pertinent to the investigation were identified as Melanie Boudreau, Alex Cox, Zulema Pastenis, Summer Shiflet, Lori Vallow, and Chad Daybell. Now, I mentioned this in the last live, but they conveniently left out Melanie Gibb. But I think all through this police report, they were trying to preserve some credibility for Melanie. I think they thought she was going to be like some kind of star witness, and she was not. Okay, we also know that Janice and someone else, at least one other person from the family, went to Preparing a People conference in Arizona.
I didn't know there was a group. I didn't know she was leading something. I had no idea she's involved in any type of group. But I remember when she started going to these conferences.
We are holding the Rexford Preparing a People conference with Chad Daybell, one of our main speakers.
I'm just very honored to be part of the conference. I've recently released my autobiography entitled Living on the Edge of Heaven, where I tell more about my 2 near-death experiences and how that prompted me to write my novels.
It was called a Preparing a People. It was just a meeting. Lori had wanted us to go with her, and Chad gave a talk at it.
I've been waiting for 20 years for something to happen.
Okay, and then she changed the subject. So we know that they went, and these are some of the details that last time I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't share this. And today I'm like, no, okay, I'm sharing it all. Okay, also, Summer was a bit of a fangirl of Jason Mouse. She promoted his work. I don't know the date on this because someone grabbed the screenshot, dropped it into one of the Facebook groups that I was in. So it just showed like 1 year ago. But this was probably about the January, February time frame. So it probably would have been January, February 2019, I'm guessing. But Summer said to Jacqueline, you should read this book. If you love Captain Moroni, this is an awesome insight into his life and leadership. 3 hearts, a screenshot of the book, Jason Mouse book. Someone else said, David read this and it's next on my list. And Summer said, heart, I loved it. We also know that she and Jason messaged on, well, I should say, it appeared that they were connected on Instagram and shared messages because I remember I didn't grab this screenshot, someone else did, and redacted some of the points, but this one you could see that this is, I believe, if memory serves me, this Jason Mouse's wife. But they said that this was about Summer, and the person's name in here is Summer. From a legal standpoint, can I prove that this was Summer Shiflet? No, I don't even remember who shared the screenshot. But so take it for what it's worth. Someone tagged Jason and said, I hate to bring this back up again, but Summer or someone with access to her account just shared Instagram direct messages between you two and now circulating over the internet. Doesn't look good. Just a heads up. If anyone has the screenshots of these Instagram messages, please email me at amurderousheart@gmail.com. Someone replied, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Like I said, I'm pretty sure, I mean, it's been a long time since this was shared and I looked into this, but I'm pretty sure this was Jason's wife replied, agreed, but sometimes people need a humble throat punch. So if this was indeed Summer, it appears that at some point she and Jason had a falling out. But at one point, again, if this is Summer, they were connected on social media. Also, Summer said she met Chad.
I don't know Chad very well. I've only met him one time.
Okay, no, I don't know that I believe that. That might have been at the Preparing a People conference in Arizona. We will talk about, is Summer the mystery woman in the ring footage from October 29th? But we do know that she met Chad. Okay, so I personally believe that this is the everybody Summer reference when she was so upset and she said, you told, everybody not to trust me because I was going to talk to Adam. There was just that question of who is everybody? Like, it wasn't their family, because I don't see family members cutting Summer off unless there's something that I've missed. So who is this everybody that Summer was so upset that like now they've lost faith in her. They lost confidence and trust in her. So I think that I think she was far more involved in this group than she wants to let on. Okay, so now we're going to make our way to the timeline to provide evidence of some of these points that I've made, but also see some of her sketchy behavior. We're going to start with January 23rd. This was the day that Charles finds Chad's rating email. And we know this, disregard the 4. I just kind of zoomed in from, it was like a much bigger screenshot I had created for something else. But you see here, it's January 23rd. This was from the Netflix documentary, so it wasn't completely useless, but pretty close. So he finds the email and forwards it to his Gmail. So he accesses Lori's iCloud account, finds his email, then forwards it to Colby, and we don't know exactly who all saw this email. We know that it was sent to Adam. We know that it was sent to Kay. Obviously, she was his main confidant. But then Rex said that it was also sent to him. So I'm just setting this as backdrop. Charles finds this rating email, and first of all, there were multiple family members who were rated a dark spirit. For some reason, he wasn't, but his son Cole was, and Kelsey was, Brandon was, and I think Summer's husband kind of teetered on light and dark, if I remember correctly. But the two most alarming dark spirit ratings were Joe, who was marked as sealed away. In other words, not eligible for any more probations because he made a contract with the devil. He was a 4.3D, and Tylee was a 4.1D. So it wouldn't have taken very much to like look over these ratings and see, whoa, wait a minute, this is really serious. Like Tylee was in imminent danger. And from what I've seen, Charles was the only one who flagged this, because we know that he emailed Colby and said she calls her own daughter a dark spirit. Please help her. So that I'm just setting that as the backdrop. He would send these emails out to the entire family, and Colby even made a reference to this in the Netflix documentary, so we're going to listen to that.
I called my mom, and she's like, I found out Charles has been cheating for years. Every time he goes to California and he has these girls that he's spending all this money on secretly. And I called him, and he was freaking out. And he was just saying that she's like out of her mind now, and like, this is not your mom, Colby. And I didn't know what that meant at all. I was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you sound more crazy than you're saying she is. At that time, it looked like a guilty person was freaking out because they've been caught. So I just stopped talking to him. So then he starts emailing
Wait, let me just make one point here. He stopped talking to Charles. Justin Lum had asked him if Charles had gone to the hospital when they had their daughter, and he said no, only Lori. So Charles actually never met his grandchild.
Everyone in the family and saying she's crazy, and he starts emailing everyone in the family and saying she's crazy and that she thinks she's a god. Everyone's tagged in our family, and it's like that to me was so annoying. Like, this is between you and her. Stop bringing everybody in your drama.
So here he's saying he's sending these emails out to everyone in the family. And then this is the example that they show, that he I mean, I was shocked. It was actually Kim Schmidt. She's a cool cat. I asked her if I could mention her name. She is an absolute eagle eye And I wasn't able to take any screenshots of the documentary because Netflix has that turned off. Like it detects if you're taking a screenshot, and the screen just goes black. So I couldn't grab screenshots from it. I tried like taking pictures with my phone. It was just really jacked up. But Kim was able to, because I was like, there's a date. I need to see that date. And she was able to grab a screenshot. And I was, again, genuinely, absolutely shocked to see January 23rd, because this was before their big blow up. And I think that this was part of the reason that he was identified as a dark spirit, because he wasn't in Chad's ratings, which is still just so strange to me. But then Charles finds this email. He is freaking out, and then suddenly he's a dark spirit, this, spirit of this friend of his who died as a kid. Ned Schneider had overtaken his body, and now he was a dark spirit. And I shared this in another live, but you can see that Lori was feeding this information to Chad, because 2 days before this big blow up where it was announced that Charles was a dark spirit, he was doing searches for a Ned Snyder, and he had the year of his death wrong. So he's searching Google for some Ned Snyder. I think he spelled it Snyder. He's trying to get the backstory on, who this guy was, and, so he could come up with this plausible story, at least for Lori and their group, to be able to convince everyone that, oh yeah, okay, so this dark spirit who used to be a friend of Charles took over his body, and now he's a dark spirit. And that's how he was going to explain away the fact that he didn't already identify Charles as a dark spirit. He wasn't even on the edge like Summer's husband. He was a light spirit. I think he was like a 2L or something like that. But anyway, so then on the 31st, you can tell that he had updated information. I've shared this in another live, but I think the year that this guy died was like 1996 or something. And so now he had the right spelling and the right year. And then that's the same day that this whole blow up happened, and Melanie Gibb just happened to be at Lori's house when Lori got the call from Chad. But Lori's leading from behind here, where she said Chad let her know that Charles was now a dark spirit. So anyway, but so Charles wasn't a dark spirit when he found this, but he is flagging the fact that she rated her own daughter a dark spirit. Whatever issues he and Tylee had, and clearly they had a lot of friction in their relationship, he made this appeal to who knows how many people in the family, please help her. It just so happened that Colby did a Netflix documentary, and they didn't see any harm in showing a screenshot of this email.
I called my...
Okay, and so as I was digging through the FOIA docs at one point, I think this was from the first round of FOIA docs, not that that matters, but this was a pretty typical email that Charles would send out. I imagine he included different family members in different emails. I don't know what this document was, but you can see he sent the email to Lori, and then he copied in Barry, Summer, Colby, Cole, and Zach. Okay, so fast forwarding, January 30th, Lori sends a text to, well, I'll just read it. Lori sent her mother, sister, Melanie Boudreau, and Alex Cox a text message that read, "Please do not answer the phone if Charles calls you. We are in a big argument and he is looking for people to be on his side. Thank you. I love you all." Okay, So they were already fighting before she canceled his flight and all of that. I do suspect that it had in part to do with this ratings document. Next day. All right, Summer, and this is the point that I made early on. How is Summer supposed to identify that Lori is delusional when she clearly shared her delusions? So this is January 31st. Summer, Lori's sister, texted Lori and stated he talked to Jeff, that's her husband, and Mimi this morning and told them that you left him and that he called the police. And if they track you down, they are taking you in for a psych eval. He told Mimi that he had someone from, what, I still haven't checked how to pronounce that, so I won't attempt it, or state presidency, listening in on a conversation you had with him where you told him you would kill him and that you were married to Moroni and that whoever was listening, this was Gabe Bonilla, the bishop, was going to have your recommend suspended until they talk to you. I just want you to know what we are hearing on our end. And there did seem to be some evidence that her temple recommend was temporarily suspended because at one point Charles texted Lori and told her don't go into work today. So it's kind of weird that they were like talking about her doing temple work like it was work, but he said don't go into work today. Your temple recommend has been suspended. So but then Summer says, I want you to know, ... that I 100% support you. I am here if there's anything I can do for you to help. So, okay, no harm, no foul so far. The fact he would try to get your recommend suspended shows extreme evil and malicious intent. All right, things are ramping up. It's hyperbolic, but all right, I can give her the benefit of the doubt. Up to this point, I know you have help from the other side. I know you are being inspired to know what to do, and you are prepared to do your mission. I support you. I love you. I am here for you. I'm so sorry you have to go through all this crap. So we don't know if she had received the email with the ratings. We don't know how much she knew at this point, but by her own admission, Lori was already showing signs of being really off kilter, of being deluded. And here she is just saying, I know you have help from the other side. You're being inspired to know what to do, and you're prepared to do your mission. I mean, even Janice was like, I mean, she took his stuff. She emptied out the bank account, you know? So like even Janice was like, this seems pretty far. Not Summer. She's like, I know you're being inspired. Oh, you want to cancel his flight? You want to empty out the business account? Get rid of his clothes, hide his truck in a hotel parking lot. Don't tell him for several days where to find it. All of this chaos, that's fine. Yeah, that's inspired. No, Charles trying to get your temple recommend suspended. That's extreme evil and malicious intent. Not you. You're getting help from the other side. Fast forward to July 9th. So this is just hours leading up to Charles' murder. There is no obvious communication found between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell to show that he was directly involved with the planning of Charles Vallow's murder. I would contend with that. But Lori Vallow found out about Adam coming to town through her mother and Summer Shiflet. Lori found out about the potential intervention on July 9th. She reached out to Alex Cox, Melanie Boudreau, and Summer Shiflet to warn them of the elaborate plan that Adam and Charles had. Adam and his son Zach were picked up at the airport on July 10th by Adam's mother. Now, keep in mind here, Adam was supposed to be flying into Phoenix to help Charles. So there's already a bit of a question here. Wait a minute. Why is his mom picking him up at the airport? Like, Charles wanted this to be a clandestine operation. And we'll talk about just how much Adam wasn't down with this being a clandestine operation, that is, the ones Charles bought his ticket. Summer provided Lori with updates regarding Adam's whereabouts and asked Lori if she wanted to run interference. And I think this was supposed to be if Lori wanted Summer to run interference. Lori told Summer that she was trying to figure it out. Summer commented, and we don't know what the provocation was here. We don't know what Lori said that Summer would respond this strongly, but she said, and this, by the way, this isn't me like surmising what was probably in this redaction. I found the total, like, I think this was the affidavit of probable cause that came out of Chandler. It was very heavily redacted, but then when they released the second round of FOIA docs, I found the entire affidavit of probable cause unredacted. So I went back through and I did a whole video where I just read the complete unredacted version of the affidavit of probable cause, and this is a screenshot from that. But Summer commented, "I will kill him myself if that is the case." Multiple exclamation marks. She is in full Karen mode here. Lori responded, "No, I need you safe." So here she is being protective big sister, like, "Oh, I appreciate that offer, really do. I need you safe. Well, we got this covered." And even just a fact that Summer would say, "I will kill him myself if that is the case." The assumption there is that she knew, she had foreknowledge that there was a plan to kill Charles, because otherwise, why say, "I'll kill him myself"? I mean, the assumption here is, no, you're not going to have to kill him, Lori or Alex, whoever is planning to do the dirty deed. I'll do it myself. And then the police report, ever so foolishly, adds in, there is no indication who Summer was talking about killing. Well, judging by the fact that this was July 10th and Charles was killed on July 11th, just hours after this exchange, I'm going to go out on a limb and say she was talking about Charles. Also, in addition to the fact that Adam was picked up at the airport by his mom for this, what was supposed to be a clandestine operation, it says in the police report on June 28th, Adam sent Charles a text message stating that he told his mother. Now, he didn't ask Charles about this. He just went ahead and made an executive call that Charles was thinking he was just going to show up and they were going to have this intervention. They were going to pull in the bishop, or no, the stake president, because Adam played basketball with him. They were going to pull in the stake president, whose last name was Holmes, and do this intervention and get her temple recommend suspended in hopes that she would see the error of her ways and repent. And, so that was Charles' plan. But then Adam says, Adam sent Charles a text message stating that he told his mother they needed to have a family meeting to hold Lori accountable and to have her explain the things that she has been saying. That was not the plan. Well, Adam went rogue and he was like, "I got this. Here's what we're going to do. I already told my mom, so you can't tell me you don't want me to do it. We need to have a family meeting," and they're going to pull Lori into it. Charles responded, "I will not be there. This is on her. I tried getting her help and the entire family except for you." That's debatable. "Put a scarlet letter on my forehead. The truth is I put her back in Arizona so she could do her evil somewhere else." The regrettable detail in that is that he sent JJ with her. "The only thing she's doing right is with JJ. He doesn't understand why mommy left him for 72 days, but she did. She blames it's all me, blah, 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 blah." Anyway, but the point here, then Charles added, "I'd get," and I think this was Holmes and Gabe Bonilla there, "she's on a very dangerous path and thinks she's not. She truly thinks she's on a special mission on her 5th probation from Heavenly Father himself." Charles would later tell Adam that if Mimi, Lori, Melanie, Colby, Summer, or Tylee knew the reason for the meeting, they would not show up.
So this is Charles saying like, no, we're not going to go and just announce that you were there and you're going to have this family meeting. But Adam had promised Charles two things. One, that he would meet with Holmes because he played basketball with him on Friday nights, and that he would record this family meeting that they had. He didn't record the meeting. This is later or at some point in the police report. Adam told me Lori says she goes to the temple and talks to Jesus Christ, and she has been married to Moroni. Lori also says she is on a mission to lead 144,000 people, and Adam felt that could mean killing Charles or anyone that is getting in the way of her mission. Adam said Lori loves attention, and she thinks she is better than everyone else. Adam said Lori has given people blessings, which she is not allowed to do in the LDS church. Adam said he was going to speak with the stake president, but he was not able to. Adam said he was going to record Lori, but was not able to. So those were the two things that he promised Charles that he would do, while not relenting on his plan to meet with the family. So we don't know when this meeting with the family took place. I suspect on the 10th, but we don't know. But we do know that he just said he wasn't able to, and he also wasn't able to speak with the stake president. Of course, by Friday, Charles was already dead. Okay, July 9th. Lori has a family meeting. So this is the day before Charles and Adam flew into town. My question is, who was at this family meeting? So this is at 6:18 p.m. Lori received a text from someone. This was Melanie Gibb. The name associated with this number, according to Lori's contact list, was Phoebe. The same number on the and Lori for style fit in there account was listed for Melanie Gibb. The text read, "Are you home? I want to come over." Lori replies stating, "All my family and the kids are here, so it's chaos right now." So I think part of the reason that I catch things other people miss, and again, I don't mean this in a self-aggrandizing way at all, is that when I'm reading, my brain is like playing like a video. I don't think that that's particularly unique, but it does make it more cumbersome when reading through a police report because I can't turn it off. I can't just like, okay, let me just scan this. It's like, it's just always playing like a video. So, knowing what I know about the Cox family, I'm like, wait a minute, this is less than 48 hours before Charles is shot and killed. And she's having a family meeting at her house. And we know it's at her house because Melanie Gibb insisted on coming over and then just like showed up and came in. But so for Lori to say, all my family and the kids are here, I'm like, okay, this, in my opinion, this is a Cox family circling the wagons. This is what they do. Anyone who's an outsider who marries into the family, like you don't just divorce someone from the Cox family and go about your life with your dignity intact. No, you are vilified, you're demonized, you're attacked. In Joe's case, who knows what may have been said to Colby's biological father to make him like just take off, but probably the reason he's still among the living is that he did just take off. It was like, that's fine. You guys just do your thing. But here they are, they're circling the wagons, in my opinion. But there's a little clue here, like all my family and the kids. So the only people I could think of who would most likely be included in this little family powwow would be Colby, who only had one child, Melanie Boudreau, who had 4 kids, and Summer, who has 3 kids. And
But then we find out, no, Melanie wasn't there, because just minutes later, around an hour later, so this is 6:18, 7:21, Lori's texting Melanie, need to talk to you ASAP. So clearly Melanie's not there. And then they text back and forth, and Melanie calls her. Obviously, Melanie's not there. So now that just leaves us with Colby's daughter. That's one child. So who are the other kids? You know, it's not a smoking gun, but I would, I strongly suspect Summer was there. She was there for this family powwow, because she was also playing reconnaissance, you know, passing on information to them. So she's kind of a key player in all of this. Okay, so already talked about that. All right, so yet she said in this interview with Morgan, I think his name is Lowe, I forget, that she knew for a fact Lori didn't conspire to kill Charles.
Summer, do you think that she is guilty of the things that she is accused of?
No, I don't. Not even a little bit. I know for a fact that she did not conspire to kill Charles in any way, shape, or form. I spent a lot of time with Lori and Alex leading up to Charles' death, and I know that there was never any kind of discussion like that about it.
Okay. I mean, obviously at this point, like, this is around a year before the FOIA document dumps started to hit the scene. They had no idea that these text messages would ever one day become public, and that there would be a family member who would like go and read all, like, however many thousand pages. Again, not a humble brag, but I'm pretty sure, like, you could just see by her smugness, she was so confident, no one will ever know that I actually offered to kill Charles myself.
Summer.
All right, so also July 10th, Summer is playing cards with Adam and Zach. So they come to her house. I'm not sure if they spent the night at her house that night, because Adam was thinking he was going to stay with Alex, which, again, why would Adam be staying with Alex, who Charles was concerned about? Like, this just made no sense. It's like Charles buys him this ticket and he's like, oh, dope. I'm going to have a family reunion. I'm going to catch up with all my family. And but Alex wasn't returning his calls. So then Adam reached out to Summer, asked if he could, or no, I think Alex reached out to Summer to ask if Adam could stay there. Anyway, Summer stated that Adam came into town on Wednesday, July 10th. Weeks before this, Summer had arranged for Adam's son, Zach, to stay at her house while she was in New York. I'd love to see evidence of that. I kind of doubt this was planned weeks beforehand. But Adam came over to her house with Zach, and she and Adam ate and played a card game together, which is just such a bizarre detail to me. Like, it's just like it's just weird. Anyway, Summer did not say a word about her concerns regarding Lori's safety. Summer asked Adam why he came to Arizona, and she stated that he was very awkward with his answer. So here's Summer going, you know what? I don't like how cagey he's being. But she was doing the same thing. Like, they're just, like, ironically, both, like, neither one of them are showing their hand here. Summer added that Adam was not himself, and this was very concerning. She never mentioned anything about Charles coming to town on the same day. Summer felt that something was up, but she did not know what. I think really the whole purpose of having them over was most likely just to get information to pass on to Lori. But again, there are a lot of missing parts in this story, because when did Adam have this family meeting? I mean, it had to have been before, but I don't know. I mean, I guess it didn't have to be, but it would make sense that it would have been before Charles was killed. But anyway, okay. Also, let's see. Yeah. Also on July 10th, Lori and Alex went to Summer's house because this was July 9th. Alex called Lori again, and the two would talk for over 56 minutes the following day. So, I was able to surmise, okay, so this was July 10th. Lori would have lunch with Alex and Melanie. Lori and Alex would then go over to Summer's house. Text messages between Lori and Summer indicated that Summer knew of the intervention and was providing information to Lori about Adam once he arrived in Phoenix. In reviewing Lori's cellular phone records, she had contact with only Chad, Phoebe, Melanie, Charles, Summer, and Alex during the hours leading up to and following the discovery of the intervention. There was also a note that Detective Moffat had made. He was very concerned about Kay having contact with Adam, and he tried calling her 3 times one evening, couldn't get a hold of her, let Bobby know that he to pass on this message that he was concerned about how trustworthy Adam was, because he said that there was evidence that Adam may have called Lori after talking to Charles. Now, when they say may have, they're not saying may have because he's not exactly sure. Like, maybe I read that, maybe I didn't. I don't know. Just in case, I'm going to call Kay 3 times. I'm so alarmed, I'm going to call her 3 times. I think the reason he said may have is that all they know is that this phone number called this other phone number. So they can't say who was in control of the phone at that time. That's why even when Lori took Alex's phone to the temple, or when Alex's phone, was at Chad's property, they're very careful to say, Alex's phone pinged at Chad's property, because they can't say definitively who was carrying the phone, who made the phone call. But it stands to reason that he suspected it was Adam, and that Adam may have been playing both sides. And so anyway, we don't know the details of that, and we don't know which phone call he then called Lori, apparently directly after talking to Charles. Hopefully we'll get more information from the Arizona trial. Okay, so this is all leading up to Charles' murder. Now we're going to talk about Summer's activity following Charles' murder. So this is July 11th. This is the day after, the morning after, the morning that Charles was murdered. It says, on July 11, 2019, Summer flew to New York. Before she left Phoenix, she sent Alex a text message stating, on the plane, anything yet? And I'm just going to say right there, to say anything yet is highly suspicious. It's like she knew, first of all, if she were concerned for Lori's safety, and I talked about this on Friday, but my kids and I have been in scenarios where someone is concerned about their safety. And when that happens, they'll send out a text to the rest of us. And then we're like, or even if, one of them just texts me, I'm like, okay, call me when you get there, text me when you arrive, whatever it is that's causing someone concern. I'm not texting someone else and saying, hey, has anything happened yet? Because I'm not anticipating something. I'm worried about the person who expressed some concern, who is in a situation that could be dangerous. And I'm going to contact that person directly. So if if Summer had contacted Lori and had said, are you okay? Please call me. Did Charles leave? Something like that. Then that would show more sincerity. But there's no record of Summer texting Lori. That doesn't mean she didn't. There's just no record of it. But we do have a record of her texting Alex and just saying on the plane, anything yet? Like, she anticipated something was going to happen that Alex was involved in. And so she wanted to find out from Alex. And I believe she knew full well the plan to murder Charles that day. And the reason she texted Alex is she wanted to know, did you kill him? You know, because Alex isn't batting 1,000 as a hitman here. You know, like he tased Joe, and he was supposed to kill Joe back in 2007. He was unsuccessful. And then we would see he would have, thankfully, other unsuccessful attempts at murder. So I don't think that the family had the most confidence in him. And so she wanted to know, is the deed done? Because now I'm going to go on a plane. I mean, you can text on a plane, so I don't know, you know. But anyway, Alex did not respond. She would send another text to Alex when she arrived in New York around 10:19 p.m. She asked Alex if anything had happened yet, as she was concerned that Adam and Charles were going to do something. Again, if she was concerned that they were going to do something, why wouldn't she have reached out to Lori? This text was obviously after Charles had been killed. Alex responded by telling Summer to have fun and no worries. It was not until July 12th that Summer called Alex and she was informed that Charles was killed. Now, the rest of the family knew that Charles was killed on the 11th. I personally believe that also included Adam, because why else would they take off for Tucson? Why would they suffer from such a deplorable lack of curiosity that it takes 2 days, and them talking about their concern about Charles for their friend to be like, I don't know, well, let's Google his name, you know? Like, I mean, Zach was a millennial or Gen Z. I don't know exactly where he falls in, but clearly grew up with technology. This was a very simple thing. Like, why? I mean, during those 2 days, and there are pretty dramatic contradictions between what Adam said that they were doing during those 2 days and what his wife Nicole said that they were doing, even where they were, what day they went to Tucson. But Nicole did say that Adam was worried on the 11th and texted her and said that something like he was afraid that Alex and Lori did something to Charles. That was on the 11th. So it just doesn't stand to reason that they just wait 2 days and then their friend has to be like, well, I don't know, let's just Google his name. But anyway, okay. All right. So supposedly she didn't find out until July 12th, which was Friday. And Summer stated that she felt that Alex and Lori were trying to protect her, so she didn't worry while she was on her trip. Sorry, don't believe it. Okay, fast forward, October 7th. And this, I'm just going to open up. This is absolutely bizarre. Let me zoom in here. Let me see. Okay. All right. On October 7th at 1:04 p.m., Summer sent Lori a message asking if she already knew about the Tesla incident. Lori responded at 3:51, indicating that she did not know. Summer asked if she should call or text. Lori asked Summer to text her. Now, this is significant because according to the police report, by October, Lori had become very savvy and that there weren't a lot of text message like evidence because Lori would tell people to just call her. But not in this case. And this is evidence that of just like Lori's cruelty. She's like, no, this I want this in writing. Like, you would think she would be even all the more careful. This was 5 days after Brandon was shot at. Like, she was, telling Melanie, call me, because Melanie would put all of this damning information in text messages, and Lori would just reply, call me. And that cost her some trust points. But here she tells Summer, no, yeah, you just go ahead and text. The following is the text string as it appears. Summer, an incident that supposedly happened to Brandon, ... sounds highly suspicious. So at this point, it's October. A lot has been going on. I mean, here, like, once again, why am I drilling this point? Well, because here she said in this interview with Nate Eaton that, oh yeah, and looking back, she was delusional in as early as late 2017, early 2018. Here she is, October 2019, still very actively supporting her delusions and really taking it to the next level in this exchange. Lori, Brandon's Tesla or the Tesla company? This was most likely emojis. They don't translate into their database, and so they'll show up as like multiple question marks. Summer, Brandon's. He claims someone shot at him and shot the window to his Tesla a few days ago. ... Police are looking into it. Summer, I think he is either trying to set Al up or make a future hit on Mel, make him look innocent, knowing him. But who knows? Knowing him. Sounds suspicious to me. Lori sets her up. Maybe it was Edgar. Where is he? And who is Edgar? Let's see. This is Edgar. Edgar was Summer's lover. She was still married, so I don't know if they had an open marriage. I don't know if this cost her her temple recommend or what, but this was a picture that she had posted publicly. At least that's my understanding. But anyway, okay, so that's who she's talking about. So maybe it was Edgar. Where is he? Summer. These are emojis. I doubt it was him. He wouldn't miss. Or leave witnesses. And then, does she leave it there? No, she goes all in. He usually makes things look like natural causes. But IDK where he is or what he's doing. Sorry about all the sirens. Welcome to the city. Okay, Summer. He has a message to me on his Smule page, but I haven't responded. She's just very coy that way. So here's Summer. First of all, Lori's setting her up. Why is she setting her up? Because Lori has to make sure that everyone's hands are dirty. At this point, both of the kids are dead. There was an attempt on Brandon's life, and they were already, at this point, in the throes of planning Tammy's murder. This was just a few days before the first attempt on Tammy's life. But I mentioned this in another live. Like, it was like October 3rd or October 4th. They were all, I think it was October 3rd. Yeah, they were already like making plans for Tammy's murder. Like Alex was taking pictures of the falls, which makes me wonder if one of the plans that didn't work out was maybe Chad was supposed to take Tammy to the falls and push her over, because there was a picture of them by the falls. So, he could have had some plausible deniability, like, oh, we just, we love that place. We've taken pictures there before, but she slipped on the rock. I mean, that's classic Dateline material right there. We don't know, but, he was just like right back on the bandwagon planning the next murder. And Lori needed to make sure she maintained Summer's cooperation. So what better way than to set her up and entice Summer to put something as foolish as this in text. But I mean, you don't get much more enabling than that. Like, this is what I was talking about with the saber rattling. Like, listen, you're not the only one with a hitman. I have my own hitman. I mean, sure, he hasn't gone through puberty yet, but no, he's a lion. He doesn't leave witnesses, unlike some people, and he makes things look like natural causes and stuff. I'd love to know what Edgar thinks about having been pulled in by Summer. Okay, fast forward to October 29th. I have talked about this in multiple lives, but it is directly relevant here. You can even see in the thumbnail, this is a slender woman who appears to be brunette. Like back in the day when this was first released, like we were zooming in, screenshotting. The person definitely looks like brunette. There are some people who are like, oh no, that's not, the person's blonde. And the audio quality is really bad in this recording because whoever this was fascinated by an igloo. So just out of screen here, someone had built an igloo. It's the end of October. There was plenty of snow. And this person ran past close enough to this person's home to trigger their Ring camera. And this is exactly why I would never turn to a life of crime. I'm like, this is how I would get caught. Like, I'd trip and fall in front of someone's Ring camera and like be caught on video or something. Plus I have a ridiculous conscience. But this person was fascinated by snow, trips this Ring camera, and in my opinion, this person looks and sounds like Summer because you can hear when she's talking with Lori. So Lori's over here. That's Lori's door. She's standing in the doorway and they're kind of like talking back and forth. It's loud enough that the Ring camera picks up on it. When they laugh, it sounds like they're laughing in stereo. Like when my girls and I laugh, like the people have said, like it sounds creepy because we have the same laugh. And it's kind of similar to that. So I'm just going to go ahead and play it without further ado. She said, but it's too small, and then they both giggle. Oh, and by way of just being transparent, we do know that Audrey Bertiero was in Rexburg at the same time. So at the trial, when we found out that she had flown to Rexburg, supposedly was so concerned, but joined Lori and Melanie in Hawaii. This was after Tammy died. She joined them in Hawaii and then flew with them to Rexburg. So I wasn't buying really any part of Audrey's story. But at the trial, I thought, oh man, maybe that was Audrey. So it is a possibility that this woman is Audrey because we know she was in town. We also know that Melanie Boudreau was in town at this time because she signed the lease for her apartment the day before, October 28th. So I'll rewind it just a little bit more. I think she said it's big enough for a 4-year-old, and whoever the woman was said, but it's cool. And then they close the door. So we don't know who this mystery woman is. I really, really, really hope that John Pryor asked Summer when she's on the stand if she was in Rexburg, if she ever traveled to Rexburg. Because if she did, that calls into question everything she said on her recorded phone call, in her interview with Nate. So I am trying to reserve, somewhat of space for the possibility that that wasn't Summer. But there is the possibility that Summer was in town. And even after I had said, I think it was in maybe a post on the community tab, I think I even went so far as to say, oh, it was Audrey. But then I thought back to the GPS data. So this GPS data, I'm going to forward to the next slide. In the first document dump that came out of Chandler, there were these screenshots. They were pretty buried in the document dump, but they were these cast reports, and they were tracking these different players in their activity in different places. So this was Arizona, but there was also tracking in Rexburg. So there is the chance that this SS is Summer Shiflet, and they could have gotten a search warrant for when she was in Arizona. I think that would have been pretty tough to get. Alexa, stop. But you know, like how would they have been able to justify that? She's in her home city. So possibility, but I don't know. But I took note of this legend. So LV, obviously, that's Lori Vallow. Those were red dots. CD, that's Chad Daybell. BB, that's Brandon Boudreau. Obviously, I'm saying like most likely. And this was a device. I covered this in 2 different lives. I have a whole live just about the GPS data and 4 mysteries that the GPS data possibly solved. So you can search for that and check that out. You know, hopefully before my channel gets shut down by YouTube, because they did like include a little passive aggressive message after when I submitted my appeal, just letting me know that most owners never get a second report. So I'm like, okay, all right, duly noted there. But anyway, this was an MB, Melanie Boudreau, CV, Charles Vallow. I'm assuming that was JJ's iPad, and that shows up at different points in the police report. But then there was this SS. So there were only 2 people involved in this story who had the initials SS, Summer Shiflet and Serena Sharp. One, I don't think Serena was still involved at this point. Like these date like October, and I think into November. But she was pretty wild. She was still friends with Zulema, but she was kicked out of the group long after the point that she said. I think she said she was kicked out in March, and then I found references that Zulema made to her being on these different phone calls well after March. But I don't think that she would have been in the inner circle at this point, especially not with 2 missing kids. But there was a point elsewhere in the police report where they're talking about the doorbell camera footage. So there were 2 different videos with doorbell camera footage. One, and JJ is playing with another child, and he's running, and he says some cuss word, and I think damn or something, and you hear Lori yell at him not to say that word. So there is that doorbell camera footage, and then there's the doorbell camera footage of whoever this mystery woman is. But Ricky Wright, he was with the FBI, I think the Salt Lake City office, said the left blue pin is almost on top of 174, and notes that that's Melanie's apartment, and 175 that's Lori's apartment, which are next to each other. Alex's apartment, number 107, was in the next row to the right, which is right about where the cluster of red and blue pins are. That makes sense. That's Lori and Melanie. In fact, his unit is 1 unit south of the one with the yellow dot at the base. And the yellow dot is this SS, and it's at Alex's apartment. And so, I even surmised, like, even if we suspend reality for a moment and say, okay, Serena came out with Audrey, would she have been at Alex's apartment? Like, he didn't even have furniture. I mean, he was there very short term and just basically camping out from everything that we can tell. And so, so here's that yellow dot at the base of apartment 107. And I made this point on Friday, but there was one of these maps that I found actually had GPS coordinates. So I took the coordinates because I was just curious, and I dropped them into Google Maps. So you can take like a longitude and latitude, these coordinates, and drop them into Google Maps, and it will pull up the location. So when I pulled up the location, it was just north of Alex's apartment. In fact, just out of curiosity, I put in Alex's address and asked Google Maps for directions, and it said walk 10 feet south. So and that wasn't, I don't think that was the yellow dot. That was just like another point. Like it didn't even say what, like whose dot it was. They were just random coordinates. So I thought it was interesting that it said, in fact, his unit is 1 unit south of the one with the yellow dot at the base. So whoever's yellow dot was at the base was obviously not hanging out with Alex's neighbor. This person was at Alex's apartment. So, yeah, and like I said, if Summer was in Rexburg, especially after the first week they were there, she would have been there when both of the kids were gone, or at least one of the kids, unless it was like the first week, but I doubt it was. Okay, all right, so Summer's involvement after the case goes public. So so Alex died on December 12th. I did some digging after, again, Eagle Eye Kim Schmidt made a mention of the fact that Janice didn't find out for a week that Alex was dead, which is astounding to me because I think I forgot to pull in that screenshot I shared on Friday, but it was, I think, Ricky Wright letting them know it was the day after he died. So the autopsy had just been done, and they said that they haven't reached out to his parents yet. So that was the December 13th. And but then I was able to verify, and we'll watch this video in a minute, that what Rex said in his podcast was true. That, well, at least I should say, Janice verified that she didn't find out for a week that Alex was dead. So at some point after they found out that Alex was dead, and Summer also confronted Lori about not telling them that Alex was dead, and Janice said she found out from the police. So I don't know why it took the police so long to contact her, again, if that's true. But at some point in December, we don't know when his service was. I hypothesized that I didn't think that this was actually a funeral service, that it was probably just something held in Janice's home. And Kim said that Rex said it was held in Zulema's home. So we don't know the date of this service, but all that to say, Summer made this video, and it was called An Ode to Alex. And it was just a memorial video for Alex's funeral. But this video got out, and so I have seen the video. It made its rounds like through the different Facebook groups. I also said in the last live, if anyone wants to see the video, you can email amurderousheart@gmail.com, and I will send it to you. Just please don't distribute it, because there's a very good chance it wasn't ever shared publicly. It may have been shared as like an unlisted video, and I have videos that are set to unlisted. You have to have the URL to open it. But clearly someone in the family went rogue, probably someone who got a hold of the URL and actually thought that Alex was a murderer, and shared this with someone who was, I think, a YouTuber. I don't remember all the details, but that's how this got out. And Summer was really upset and confronted the Facebook group owner about it and stuff. But in that confrontation, she ended up confirming that she was the one who made the video. And her concern was that her kids were also in the video. And so it was really just, inconsiderate and cruel for people to be sharing this in these Facebook groups. But then in the interview she had with Nate, she shared pictures that included her kids. So that seems a little insincere. But all that to say, from what I could tell, all of Alex's nieces and nephews were included in this video, except for Tylee and JJ. Tylee and JJ were not included in the video. Well, at this point, like, there would have been no reason for them to not include Tylee and JJ. Like, they ostensibly, they didn't know Tylee and JJ were dead. They certainly didn't know that they were most likely murdered by Alex at the behest of Lori and Chad, ostensibly. Ostensibly, they don't know anything. So why wouldn't Summer include Tylee and JJ in this memorial video? Supposedly, she didn't even know that they were missing. Like, it's like there would be no reason for her not to include them. So to me, that was, that suggests, I'll be careful, that suggests that she didn't want to upset anyone who was at this service. I'm assuming they probably played the video at the service and then it was distributed to family, and that's how it got out. But it seems to me that she didn't want to upset someone, so she just didn't include Tylee and JJ in the video. Okay. So, according to Janice, she found out on December 19th, which is just the day before this case went public. It's also the day Colby announced that, his YouTube, that he was starting this YouTube channel, and it was also the last day he received a Venmo payment from Tylee's account. We don't know about Lori, but from Tylee's account.
Alex is a mystery in life and in death. In fact, his own mother didn't even know he died for 7 days, and then we learned later that she didn't even know he'd been married.
Sadly, regarding Alex and Zulema, I didn't know they were married until after he died. I didn't know that they had moved back to Arizona.
Alex is a mystery in life.
Okay. This was, on some level, like, if you suffer from gallows humor, on some level, and I'm not trying to make fun of Janice, but this did, like, kind of strike my funny bone when I was watching the documentary. I mean, most of the time through the documentary, I was furious. It was just such a trashy yellow journalism documentary. The only things that, in my opinion, were of any value were incidental. And this actually might not have been from the Netflix documentary. I think this actually might have been from the 2020 show she was in. And pardon my voice, I either am coming down with a cold or I have allergies, but it's getting kind of raspy. But let's play this.
about Alex's death. We had him cremated, which were his wishes, and we had a service for him. And we didn't invite anyone to his service that believed he was a murderer. So it was a very small, precious group of us who loved him.
I mean, and that, so initially it struck me as funny, but this last week, I mean, so she's basically saying, like, she's trying to be a little, emphatic here. Like, we didn't invite anyone who thought he was a murderer. So it was a really small group. And according to Kim Schmidt, and I'm quoting Kim, I asked her permission beforehand because I haven't been watching Adam and Rex's podcast. But she said that that Rex was at the service with his two daughters and estimated that there were about 15 people there. So it really was a small gathering. But this week, the thing that hit me was, I was like, wait a minute. Why would so much of the family think that Alex was a murderer at this point? Like, again, ostensibly, none of them knew the kids had been murdered. At this point, if we believe that they really didn't know that the kids were dead, that they didn't know anything, the only murder they would have known about would have been Charles. And that was, in their minds, that was a justifiable homicide. That was self-defense. So why would, at this point, the family be so divided that they decide they're not even going to invite most of the family? Like, if the person, thought that Alex was a murderer, you weren't invited. To me, this suggests, once again, that they knew a lot more than they're letting on in what I believe is a very revisionist history. Okay, then on May 7th, I didn't include this in Friday's live, but like I said, this time it was like I'm pulling out all the stops. She was in this interview, again, I think his name is Morgan Lowe, I should have double checked that. This was their first public interview that they had, and he asked if she ever asked Lori where the kids were.
Have you asked your sister where the kids are?
No, I've talked to her a couple of times. The first time I talked to her, everything is recorded, and I know she can't tell me, and I don't want to put her in a position that's going to make anything worse for her. I want her to know I love her and I support her, and she knows I love her and the kids.
Again, to me, this is my opinion, this is not in keeping with a sincere response. Like, at this point, the story is public. Lori didn't produce her kids as she was mandated. Even Janice went on record in this interview saying, I told someone to tell Lori, like, take a picture with the kids with the, holding up a newspaper. And she was like, that's what I would do, like, at bare minimum. And I'm like, whoa, look at Janice making sense. Like, absolutely. But so you would think that a sincere response would be, where are the kids? Like, who cares that you were in jail and the call's being recorded? It just shows, like, this is more a mindset of, like, a crime family. Like, she knows that Lori is guilty. She doesn't want to get her in any kind of trouble. And they all knew. There's no way, I do not believe that there is any way that they all believe that Lori just had them in a bunker somewhere. Because you don't then take off and go to Hawaii for your wedding. You don't just travel about. Like, if you are so paranoid that you're going to put your kids in a bunker because you're afraid that your former sister-in-law is going to, steal your son. And then it's like, well, why put Tylee in a bunker? No one was coming for her. But okay, let's suspend reality for a moment and say they genuinely thought that she had their kids in a bunker. She would have been with them. You don't put your kids in a bunker and then take off for Hawaii. Anyway, so I just, again, this is getting into a little more of a gray area, but I think like when you take the sum total of all of these intersections where Summer's story intersects with these victim stories, none of this lines up with someone who just had a sincere concern about the kids, was shocked out of her mind that the kids were found dead. Like I said, I don't think they were shocked at all that the kids were found dead. I think they were shocked that the kids were found, and that in their minds that Lori and Chad were dumb enough to bury them on Chad's property. Okay, June 20th. It's a couple weeks after the kids' remains were found. Summer posts a tribute to the kids. And in one of the pictures, and if you want to read the post, you can go to bit.ly/summer-memorial. That will take you to the actual Facebook post. It's mea culpa, okay, we were wrong. We didn't think that this, could have happened, but we were wrong. And then she had all these genuinely sweet pictures of Tylee and JJ. But this was one of the pictures, and you can see in this picture, and I said this on Friday, this was going to be the hardest thing to go back over in another live. But in this picture, I just look at this and I'm like, okay, first of all, who would even grab a picture of this? Barry is so obviously bent over and groping Tylee. Tylee looks like she's maybe 11 or 12. I can't even look at this disgusting picture. In fact, I'm going to fast forward. But, so here they have however many pictures to choose from. And she chooses that picture, a picture of her father, who in the FOIA doc from Joe and Lori's divorce, as well as Charles and Cheryl's divorce. The FOIA docs cover both of them. There were serious allegations made about Barry with the girls in the family. There were also serious allegations made in this document that was passed on to me by someone who was involved in the investigation into Colby's claims about being essayed by Joe, that talked about, I think Joe was the one who told them that that Lori had made an outcry. She told her mom that her dad essayed her, and according to this report, Janice had kicked Barry out of the house, threw his belongings on the front yard. I can't verify, obviously, one way or another. But when, and even just from confidential sources who are close to the family, there have been these allegations that it was pretty well known that Barry had this history. There was one detail, I can't even repeat it. It was just so disgusting from the report that was passed on to me. But out of all the pictures that Summer had of Tylee, and clearly she had a lot of really sweet ones because she provided them to Nate, but in her post that was supposed to be a tribute, she includes this picture. And I look at that picture and I'm like, first of all, who would even take that picture? And then even if you took a picture upon discovering what was going on, why wouldn't you destroy that picture because it's just so absolutely heinous in my opinion? And then not only do they keep the picture, Summer is like, yeah, I'm going to include this picture in the tribute to me. And again, don't want to be unfair, but I and also, you know, full disclosure, I was absolutely livid when I saw that picture, because to me it communicates disdain for Tylee. I'm like, this is just a Cox classic. I'm hiding in plain sight. Here I am. I'm publishing this mea culpa. You know, yeah, so sad. The kid's remains were found. Here's this lovely picture of my dad groping my niece. Oh, and here's this other picture. This is a little more of a gray area. At minimum, this is tone deaf. You know, I'm not willing to even give her that much of the benefit of the doubt. She posts a picture clearly of Tylee at the gun range, and Janice Summers was the one who spotted this, so she's the other eagle eye I know. She picked up that you see a reflection of Alex's truck in Summers' sunglasses, so that's kind of weird. But anyway, but in my mind, like when Summer posted this, now also at the time I was absolutely distraught, not because I was surprised that the kids were dead. I never thought that they were alive, but the detail about just the state of Tylee's remains, and then when Nate flew over in the helicopter, there were a bunch of us from TCU who were taking that footage and grabbing screenshots. And you know, I had a very large screen and I was like zooming in on one of the screenshots and saw a picture, just a trigger warning. This is going to be graphic. If you can't handle graphic details, come back in about 30 seconds. But I zoomed in on this picture and was like, oh my gosh. Like I could tell that it appeared, I mean, you could see it was a part of a skull, but it looked like Tylee's mandible was sitting next to her skull. So, I mean, I was absolutely distraught. Ended up like checking myself in somewhere because my daughter was really worried because I just couldn't stop crying. But so, you know, that was kind of my mindset at the time. So definitely a much more of a like an acutely sensitive state. But even since then, and I may be influenced by that, but I'm like, at the absolute minimum, this is tone deaf. But to me, it suggests that Summer was like, you know, I'm just kind of floating out there that Tylee knew how to use a gun too. So, I mean, you know, take that for whatever it's worth. And I remember in the early days, there were trolls in the groups. And I said this Friday, I stand by this. I suspect that the majority of those trolls were actually family members, not Cox family members, but family members who had an axe to grind with Tylee, because they just kept saying the same things. Like it was like all these different people, oh, she was being groomed, she was being groomed. And these were like across different Facebook groups and stuff. But anyway, but this was one of the things, oh, Tylee knew how to use a gun. Tylee probably shot Charles. So anyway, so I was very angry that I was like, okay, well, Summer, you floated that out there. Again, this is supposed to be a tribute and you're posting these pictures. Okay, then I also didn't include this in the live on Friday, but in December 2020, I don't remember the exact date, and I was just like running out of time. I am not going to play this video. I can honestly say I have never listened to this video. I just cannot handle the idea, and this isn't a flex, this is just the way I'm wired. Knowing that Rob, who was being so sincere, he made, I only know this because Janice sent me a couple of snippets, but he had gotten choked up and said like they were our kids, even though they weren't in Rexburg very long. Those were our kids, and you know, so he's being so sincere. And here, Summer, he's talking to Summer in the presence of her attorney, but in reality, her attorney recorded the call and then tried to have him disqualified for, I think it was prosecutorial misconduct, I think is what it was called. So like he had to hire an attorney to defend himself. And, you know, again, this is a classic Cox family move. I think, you know, Summer has kind of risen from the ashes, almost like a phoenix, you know, and people are, you know, understandably, and a lot of people, they're not following the case that closely, but they're like, oh, how sweet, you know. And I'm not even touching on the fact that, you know, she was designated Tylee's representative and then just threw her shot away. Like, and obviously that was recently. But you know, she could have said, you know what, I actually have no plans on attending the trial before I testify, and I don't plan on giving a victim impact statement. So, you know, like, you know, acquiesce, like potentially give me a chance to be her representative. And at this point, it was like so down to the wire. The trial had already started. They were already in jury selection, and Judge Boyce was like, I've never received this form letting me know which family members who are witnesses plan to, you know, exercise their rights as a victim. And anyway, so that's why Judge Boyce designated, when he decided that Kay would be JJ's legal representative, he then, because Summer was also a witness, he decided to make her Tylee's representative. But anyway, but instead, Summer threw her shot away, in my opinion. It was well within her right to send a private email to just the judge. Rob Wood did tell me that because it was sent privately, like they couldn't even keep a copy of her statement. Like he said, it's kind of a weird formal thing, but like on the day of sentencing, they had to turn back over her written statement. I don't think that this rule is really keeping pace with technology, but you know, that said, okay, you know, they turned it in, but he said because of that, like her statement, whatever she said to Judge Boyce, will never be a matter of public record. So for all we know, she appealed for leniency on Lori's behalf. We'll just never know. Okay, if you want to listen to that, you can. I also didn't include this on Friday, but I remembered in that document that this person sent to me, these were like the person's notes. So this was never like an official document, like filed. Oh, well, I don't know. I don't know if this is like court record, but it would have been withheld from like any FOIA document request. That's why I'm like so careful with it. But I thought it was interesting when I was going through it about like a year and a half ago. It says here, this was March 27th, 2007. Now, I have no memory of talking to Lori's attorney, but you know, there are a bunch of notes. You can read that on your own. But then it says, therefore, John, and John was Lori's attorney, is going to have a meeting with his clients and call Annie tomorrow and go over my conversation with her while tape recording the conversation. So, you know, apparently I didn't say anything that he felt like trapped me because this recording was never played anywhere. But I just think like, you know, like this dates back to 2007. Like I do not believe that, I think his name is Garrett Smith. I just personally don't believe Garrett Smith was like, you know what we should do? We should call him. We should record the conversation. And you just kind of like lead him along, you know, get him talking about the kids, get him comfortable, you know, so that like maybe he'll say something that, you know, in their opinion, he shouldn't have. And I think he said like, Chad was wimpy. It was like the most vanilla diss you could give someone. You know, it was very Idahoan there. But anyway, but that was enough that, you know, they thought it was prosecutorial misconduct. But my point being here, this is just a classic Cox family move. So, you know, and at this point, in my opinion, Summer doesn't get the benefit of the doubt. My call is that this was the Cox family's idea. Okay, so in summary, 1, you can't identify someone else as delusional if you share their delusions. 2, I don't believe Summer would have taken the kids. I also don't believe that Colby would have taken the kids. I also believe that Summer is afraid. Like, even when she echoed Lori's tired allegation about Joe, again, I talked about this on Friday, but that's kind of moot, so I should probably stop saying that. But I thought about that a lot. I was like, why would she have said that? You know, it's not because I think she's being sincere. And I also, initially I thought, was she so arrogant as to think like she has any kind of sway as far as public opinion? Like, I mean, at that point, she didn't show up for Tylee. And people were angry. They were really angry. It wasn't just me. I mean, I was like the most reserved of them, you know, because I'm like, you know, trying to be careful in what I say. But people were really, really angry. And then when she decided to have like, you know, her own little press conference. So it was like, well, when it mattered, you know, like, oh yeah, she has nothing to say except, you know, she wants to keep it private. But then she immediately wants to do an interview with Nate Eaton. So people were already on edge. So she started off pretty well. Like, at least if she would have just stuck to, hey, here are these really sweet, endearing stories about Tylee and JJ, I think she would have weathered the storm pretty well. Because, I mean, I think it was 3 years too late. Because at that point it was like, well, what were you holding out for? Like, why wouldn't you have made a statement like this long before now? But I did at least appreciate, like, it really touched me to hear, you know, like just some of the stories that, you know, about the kids, about like Tylee's science project and, you know, things like that. It was like, I felt like I was kind of getting to know Tylee a little bit better, and that was really sweet. But then she throws in this monkey wrench of like echoing the, you know, like lending credibility to Lori's bizarre, absolutely batshit crazy statement that she made in court at her sentencing hearing, and at least with regard to her allegations against Joe. So I really started thinking about it, and I was like, I don't think that she actually thought that she was going to be able to turn the tide of public opinion. I've kind of come full circle to, I think she's afraid. I think she's afraid of possible retaliation by Lori because, you know, just given the little bit that we know, and this is just from me digging through these FOIA docs and stuff. I mean, and this is just like the tip of the iceberg. You know, we haven't gotten to the Arizona trial. I mean, one of them even said, I think it was Summer, had said, like, they begged Lori not to go to trial. And I'm like, yeah, I bet you did. You know, like, you knew that, you know, some skeletons were going to tumble out of some closets. But I think both she and Colby have to be very careful about what they say because of their involvement, because of their complicity. And I'm not saying direct involvement, like, you know, they actually killed someone or was directly involved. But, you know, I personally believe that they know way more than we have any idea that they know. And now here Lori is abandoned by her family from all appearances. And now she has years and years to just seethe over all the ways that she has been wronged by her family and abandoned by them. So I think that that's part of the reason I think that this was a bit of a parting gift to placate Lori, kind of like how Melanie Gibb gave Lori a parting gift at the end of her testimony. She testified that Lori already knew that she had been removed as beneficiary of Charles' life insurance policy. And so then John Thomas was quick to say, oh, well, then she wouldn't have any motive to murder him. And I'm like, that's not even a clever lie. That's not even like, that's not, that has to be, even for Melanie Gibb, who, yeah, she is right up there with Melanie Boudreau. If their lips are moving, they are most likely lying because they have so much to protect, But that had to be one of the dumbest lies because it was like, I think it was one or two witnesses later, Rob Wood was able to easily disprove that claim because it was in writing and they had the recording of Lori's phone call. And then, she texted Chad and said it was a dagger in her heart. And he's like, it's okay. I mean, none of this is the behavior of someone who already knew that she wasn't the beneficiary of his life insurance policy. In fact, if she had known, I don't think Charles would have been murdered because she would have made a lot more money from child support than from these, SSI payments. It was pennies. It was just under $2,000 a month. Okay. I also suspect that not just Summer, I suspect that the Cox family, given how much they all put in writing, how careless they all were, like they would make these claims and then these FOIA docs would be released, I have the most hope for Zach Cox, but even Zach, he was in the Facebook groups and he was on Twitter and he was saying, me and my dad, we were the only ones who, and it's just kind of a Cox family thing to say me and so, what. So anyway, but me and my dad, we were the only ones standing by Charles and all this stuff. So, he's getting all of this praise. And then the body cam footage came out and Charles is like, and I haven't heard from Zach since it was Tuesday or something, and the guy was like, oh, this Tuesday? And he's like, no, last Tuesday. So it had been 10 days. And so early on in 2020, I think the Cox family just thought they owned the narrative. There was never going to be a receipt presented that would disprove some of their claims, and especially their more braggadocious claims. But so they were very reckless, in all the ways they present as a crime family. And I actually don't include Zach as part of the crime family. I don't think he has that mentality. I think he was just kind of riding the waves of, all the congratulatory feedback in the groups and just good for you, good for you and Adam. And then it was, bit by bit, more and more came out. But and even when he talked about Janice, grabbing Tylee's shoulders and pulling her away, I'm like, okay, but it's 2019. It's not like it was 1956. You had no opportunity to interact with her after that. They were connected on social media. They were even connected on Venmo. I mean, they were connected, I believe, on Snapchat. And Snapchat, you can delete. Yeah, I mean, by default, you can send someone a Snapchat and then it's deleted, and so there were certainly safe ways that he could have communicated with Tylee instead of just saying, I felt like she was going to tell me something about, I don't know, being in danger or the shooting or something like that. But anyway, so I just wonder how much this family worries about a family member potentially going rogue. And I think if it's going to be anyone who goes rogue, it's going to be someone who was kind of grafted into the family, someone who married into the family. I think the members of the Cox family, they know where the bodies are buried, so to speak, so I can't really see one of them selling their story, and for a book, and if someone did go rogue, they would make money hand over fist. And so, there's the potential if someone went rogue, and if anyone did go rogue, and for whatever it's worth. I mean, this is me just like, I'm way out. I mean, this isn't even gray. This is like the faintest of gray. This is just purely conjecture, my opinion. But my money would be on Kelsey. She's already kind of on the outs unless they've, reunited. But her reputation has been damaged, and she has the most plausible deniability. She was married into the family. It would make sense that, she could go along with some of the stuff to keep peace in the marriage. She could claim abuse. I mean, there would certainly be credence to those claims if she went that route. But so I just putting myself in the mindset of a person who has a lot to hide, I just wonder how much of some of what Summer has done and what she hasn't done, where she hasn't been there, hasn't stepped up for the kids, is out of just fear of what could come out. And particularly if the person who goes rogue actually shares information about Joe's death. And again, circling back to Kelsey, whether this is fair or not, like I said, she and Colby, because they got married, I think, in January. And I know this from Lori and herself when I was staying there. I was there in May 2018, and she said that they had just moved out right before I came out, and that Charles had said, okay, there was friction between Lori and Kelsey. There was friction even when I was there. I mean, Kelsey, I had very little interaction with her. We met. I knew that they found out she was expecting while I was there, but she just came in and went to this other room and was on her phone. So we were mostly just hanging out with Colby and Zach and Tylee. She really wasn't involved, but Lori had told me that Charles had said, okay, there's too much friction in the home. Plus, it's just kind of weird, you just got married and then you move your new wife in with your family, so he was in the same hall as Tylee and Zach and stuff. But anyway, but all that to say, they were there. That meant if I'm understanding the timeline, they were there when Joe was found dead. And if Lori had a hand in it, as I've said before, she has no internal editor. I'm quite confident that Kelsey probably knows a lot of details. And in the event that Joe's death is ever investigated, if Summer was as careless as she was with Charles' murder, who even knows what text messages were exchanged among these family members when Joe died? I mean, because even when Lori went out to Hawaii, which was right after Joe's body was found, I mean, that's a solid pattern. She was bragging to two different friends in Hawaii, according to Ann Eliason, that she paid Alex to murder Joe. So, I mean, Lori wasn't hiding this, Lori wasn't being subtle. And if she was sharing that with friends who she was just visiting, I can only imagine the information that Zach, Kelsey, and Colby know. And plus, if Kelsey is still a single mother, she's, struggling, and that money would be quite the windfall. So again, I'm not suggesting that I think she's going to do that. I'm just saying, I think that some of Summer's activity, at least more recent, where, she's just kind of dancing on that line. She's like, oh yeah, I kind of figure that she was deluded in late 2017 or early 2018. And, she's just gingerly tiptoeing through the tulips when she's talking about, I think it's more fear than anything. Also, this is a family of thugs who play dirty. And then also, You don't know you'll do something yourself in response to a provocation unless you know it's something the other person planned to do. That's going back to, if that's the case, I'll murder myself. And also there is a possibility that Summer listed October through February, and she methodically was kind of weird. She was like, you cut me off, and was like October, November, December, January, February, and it's like, okay, we get it. Like she cut you off, like you could have just said, like, from October. We would have been able to surmise that would have been November, December, January, February. 4 months would have been February. And then she even said, like, and then you probably still wouldn't be talking to us. Like she made it clear she only started talking to her after she was in jail. But so I do think that there's a possibility that Summer went to those lengths in a recorded phone call. Obviously, she knew the phone call was recorded, to distance herself from the mystery woman footage. Because at this point, this was June 2020. Like, the mystery woman footage that came out early 2020, and and I wasn't the only one, but I had said from the beginning, I wonder if this is Summer, just because their voices sounded so similar. And then also just knowing the Cox family, mindset, like they're not going to invite outsiders into their inner circle. Obviously, Audrey accepted, but keep in mind, Audrey had a perfect 100 trust score, which I need to do a live about Audrey. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Okay. And then also, I drilled this point. I believe the entire family knew the kids were dead. They just didn't think they'd ever be found. Okay, if you want a copy of the presentation, you can go to bit.ly /some hyphen, that's just the dash, Shiflet. All right. I'll take a few questions. It is late. This one went even later than the last one, and the last one went late. But oops. My hair. Yeah, you can tell. Like I like play with my hair when I'm tired. Okay. All right. So as always, if you have a question, please just put the word question in all caps. If you asked a question early on in the chat, I'll never see it, except when I go back over the chat. I did actually see, excuse me, I don't know why I took a drink in the middle of a sentence. I did actually see the chat before the video went poof. Thankfully, I just stayed up that night and read through it. But sometimes I get interesting information. Like someone shared, I think it was something about like they've heard that the only person who still calls Lori is Janice, something like that. So I took a screenshot of that. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And sometimes there will just be little tidbits, but then also it's the only way, except for like in the comments of the videos, like I don't really get the chance to interact a whole lot with the community, and I do love the community. But anyway, so okay. All right, Lynette. Oh, is this Lynette? The Lynette? Like my friend Lynette? I don't know. Maybe there's another Lynette. Do you think Yellowstone was purposeful, knowing police would find last pics of Tylee and focus all searches there, not Chad's? Summer perhaps felt duped / pissed by their brazenness. So this is a buy one, get one free question. I do not think that Yellowstone was purposeful. Like, I don't think they realized just how careless they had been with their pictures and text messages. I personally, this is my personal belief, I personally think that Yellowstone, the purpose of Yellowstone was to murder Tylee. Because like, there were just so many things about that just don't bode well for me. Like, well, not bode well. They don't sit well, I guess. One, they waited until they basically kept Tylee around long enough to help unpack and babysit JJ, to help like just set up house. Then they take this trip to Yellowstone, and they were there early in the morning. I only know that because, and this is going to be kind of a long winding thing, but when I found out that that Tylee was last seen in Yellowstone, when we found that out, we didn't have the pictures. But so being in the marketing space and being a developer, I was like, wait a minute, okay. So I sent out just in my own like social circles, I had these posts asking for other developers to help me on this project. And what I wanted to do was to use something called an API. So Twitter, Facebook, all of these different social channels have APIs. And it's just like, instead of going to a site, like let's say you have a business Twitter account, you could go to Twitter and you could download, you know, like your last 30 tweets or something. But that becomes unmanageable very quickly, especially when there are a lot of tweets. And so you can use something called an API, and imagine an API being like kind of a hose that you then connect to, let's just say Excel. It's actually a database, but an Excel file. And all of this data, instead of you going to Twitter and saying, hey, give me my last 30 days, or give me all the tweets around September 8th, either September 8th or September 9th, because sometimes people, you know, share their pictures the next day or maybe 2 days later. And, you know, and also include everyone who has tagged all of these different places. So I looked up all these different places in West Yellowstone that someone could tag in a social post, and I included those, and then all of the hashtags that people used when they posted about Yellowstone, like Yellowstone Park and stuff. And so I just kind of put out an all call to all of my geeky developer friends saying, I need help accessing these APIs for Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Those were the three we focused on. And then after we got that, so a bunch of people like jumped in and helped pull all of these tweets. And then we had this volunteer army of people. In fact, this is how I got to know Janice. It was like from the different Facebook groups, anyone who wanted to volunteer to just start reaching out to people to ask them, hey, could you look through your photos to see if you see what looks like a family with, there's a mom, a young son, a 16-year-old girl. We didn't have the picture. We didn't have any pictures at that point. We didn't know what they were wearing or anything like that. But we were just like reaching out, and then people started sending us pictures and video. And then the FBI got involved, and they put out a press release, and they created a landing page for people to submit their photos and videos there, because I think they're like, we can't have this evidence, be like potentially diluted or, soiled or whatever by it crossing, all of these hands and stuff. Plus, it was just really kind. And in fact, the one analyst, I forget his name, the one with the photographic memory, he had blonde hair, he was brought in on the case to start reviewing. Like, his first task was to review the videos and photos that people sent in. All that to say, I remember someone sending either me or someone else who was reaching out to people. In fact, Janice and I became friends because she and I kept getting banned from Instagram for 3 days for sending out too many messages at one time. But anyway, so they sent this photo to someone, and there was a timestamp on it, and I just, all that to say, I remember thinking Tylee would never wanted to be up that early, like whatever time it was. I was just like, there is no way. And so plus they weren't an outdoorsy family. When I visited there in 2018, I wanted to go hiking in the mountains, but they're the kind of family, they want to hang out by the pool, so Lori wanted us to get in bathing suits and hang out by the pool, and that's just not really my thing, but I was on her turf. But so they're just not an outdoorsy family. And then it just also doesn't make sense. Why would you have this like family trip right before Tylee is murdered? Clearly they weren't trying to make memories here. And I also think it's notable that Lori wasn't in any pictures with Tylee. She was in a picture with JJ, and then she took a picture of Tylee and JJ with Alex. So anyway, so I think the whole purpose of that trip was, I think they thought maybe it would be easy to just push her over an edge or into, one of those pits or, whatever, who knows. But anyway, yeah. So no, I don't think it was to throw people off their track. Levi Jane asked, when was the last time you spoke to Tylee? That was when I was there in May 2018. But we had talked about my last night there. That was the night that Lori canceled our girls' night out. And I mean, that ended up being the biggest blessing in disguise. I mean, I was so angry at the time, because Tylee and I were both ready to go. And also, we didn't have dinner, and she just was like, yeah, anyway, peace out. And she only kept junk in the house. But anyway, but I'm so glad, because that was the only time that Tylee and I had one-on-one with privacy. And so we had talked, I'm not just saying this after the fact, we had talked about her coming out to New York City for her 18th birthday. But I just didn't want anything to do with Lori again. There were so many just really disturbing things in that visit. But yeah, I wanted Tylee to be an adult. Thank you, Emily. It's very sweet. Thank you for the comments about my hair. Oh yeah, I had announced on Friday that I just finished cancer treatments a few weeks ago. So my hair is growing back out. So I was actually able to get a cut. So this now looks like, oh, I just meant to do this. But the bangs are still really short for my 5 head, but thank you for the kind words. I at least, when I got it cut a few weeks ago, I was like, okay, at least now it looks intentional, because when you have chemo and your hair grows back, I had heard it grows back curly. It's not cool curly. It's 80-year-old on perm day curly. So even though I finished chemo almost a year ago now, it just has taken so long to grow in, because at first it was just a solid bundle of curls. But anyway, but thank you for your kind words. Bling is the new black asked, can you address Cheryl Wheeler's accusations about Colby and her sons? That I actually went into a long explanation about that in the last live. I'm going to save that for the live where I address Colby's allegations against Joe. Safe to say, I've thought long and hard about if I would ever do a video where where I kind of set the record straight about the allegations that Colby made against Joe. I mean, I love Joe and I obviously want to defend Joe. My hesitation has been twofold. One, you know, I like to stick really close to FOIA docs and you know, screenshots and stuff. But in this particular case, Colby has other victims and they are living. So according to one allegation, Tylee was also victimized by Colby. Not well, yeah, that's enough. But I mean, at least Tylee is deceased. But talking about anything that even comes close to bumping up against victims who are living or alleged victims, reported victims, that I'm not comfortable with, because that's their story. And it just, you know, they have a right to their privacy. So there's that. Then there's also the issue of, you know, Colby kind of needs every advantage he can get right now, especially with everything that happened with Kelsey. And I'm not justifying, you know, anything that Colby did, not even close, but I still feel empathy toward him. Like you know, like the guy needs as many breaks as he can get. But I do feel like we've just kind of hit a tipping point, and until this is addressed, this is just going to keep getting rehashed. And I feel like the Cox family kind of, I need to cut off this bridge from, you know, like this is, I think, the primary way that they try to keep Lori placated. But, you know, like, oh yeah, she's totally crazy about all of these other things. She was delusional, but except for this one thing, you know, that I can, that I can verify, that I'm going to lend credibility to. So, but you know, it's not something that I will take any pleasure in, but I do feel like, okay, it's time to set the record straight, to put a bridge out sign, like stop going there. And also, I just get so tired of, and I understand that people, they don't know the facts. I'm like, I can't get angry at people for saying things like, oh, she probably just, you know, planted these thoughts in his mind over, you know, over his childhood. That wasn't the case. I'll go into those details, but that wasn't the case. But I mean, this was something that Colby did, I believe. It followed on the heels of allegations, that very serious allegations that someone else had made against him. So I'll leave it there. But yeah, okay. All right. Okay, I'll take 2 more questions. Yes, I'm going to do a Q&A. Arcana Mystery asks, has Colby or his wife ever held a job? When I was there in May 2018, he was working part-time as a personal trainer at the same fitness center where he claims Lori came with Tylee and JJ to tell him she was moving. I'm not sure I believe that. And also he had 2 different stories about that. But anyway, so yeah, he was working part-time. Other than that, I don't know. I think I had heard he was working when he was in Rexburg, but then I also heard that like someone gifted them the apartment that they were staying in, so they weren't paying rent, and when they would go out to eat, like different people in the community would often like pick up his tab and stuff. So they were being assisted. But also at that point, like he was monetizing his channel, and they always, published their link tree with their Venmo and all of that. So they were getting assistance. A beautiful mess. I said, I think Adam will write a book. Well, that we know. Yeah, Adam will write a book, but Adam has it would only be in Adam's best interest to continue to protect and guard the family secrets. I don't think it would be in his best interest to say like, oh yeah, no, let me pull up these texts. No, yep, Joe was definitely murdered and Alex received this much money, and but okay, one more question and then I'm going to go. Let's see if I find one. Lori C asked, what do you think about Adam and Rex's YouTube channel? I don't have an opinion. I talked about, well, that's not totally true. I am reserving judgment. There are some details that run afoul of actual facts. There have been times where, or at least one time, where Rex even challenged Adam on something that like wasn't adding up, or it was a detail that he had wrong. But yeah, I mean, I think they're walking a really fine line, because they're obviously monetizing this tragedy, so so information is, it's almost like I don't know, it's almost transactional. Like you have information, and I mean, I give it all away for free, and as a flex, I will, that is just, I've never made $1 on this case, but a lot of the like YouTubers and different people covering the case, and let me say, I'm so grateful for their coverage. So I don't care what people's motives are, or things like that. I don't really get too into like, should these people be making money off the case, especially when it comes to YouTubers. Some of them, like, this is what they do full time, or they're trying to go in that direction. So I'm totally fine with them making money. They are and like in Lauren's case, she's interviewing people, and some of these interviews I have gotten really good information from, probably not what the people intended, but I'm like, that's good. No, keep talking, because the more you talk, the higher the chances are you're going to contradict something that someone else said, or something you said in a different interview. So I'm very appreciative, especially of interviews or like YouTubers who really dig into like the FOIA docs and the facts and stuff. But so I think in Rex and Adam's case, what they bring to the table is like kind of insider information, but the line they're walking is really fine, because at the same time, when they get something wrong, from what I've been told, and I just haven't watched their videos. I just don't have time. I'm like in the home stretch with school, and I've been dealing with treatment and stuff like that. So I just don't have time, and I really am a one-trick pony. Like if I have any time, I'm going to listen to like a court hearing or the trial, or dig through a FOIA doc because I'm curious about something. I'm not going to listen to podcasts. But all that to say, from what I've been told, when they get details wrong, they'll say like, oh, well, we haven't really been following the case very closely. So I think that ends up being a little bit of a push me, pull you kind of thing, where it's like, well, we're writing this book and we're monetizing our channel because we have this information that other people don't have. But anyway, my approach is very much just chew the meat, spit out the bones. And when it comes to the Cox family, I'm like, that's fine, keep talking. because when I do have time, I will go through these videos and I will find things. And when I have time, when I'm finished with school, I will read their book. It's probably the only book I'll read, honestly. But yeah, that I'll be, looking at it from the mindset of like, please drop little breadcrumbs along the way that I can then go back and compare against, other statements or, facts from the FOIA docs. So, okay, on that note, I am not going to have time to go through the video and create jump links to like each of the topics. I really didn't even have time. I didn't have time to do the live in the first place, then to redo the live. And I definitely do not have time to go back through and add. I usually add them to the description so that if you want to jump around, you can do that. That said, if anyone else wants to be a total hero and do that, like all I do is I just add the timestamp. Like I'll just, open up my notes app and it'll just start at like, whenever I get past the intro. So it might be like, 00, because you have to include the hours, 00:01:02. Then that just means, I start at the 1 minute 2 second mark. Then you have to leave a space. Then I put a hyphen and then whatever the note is, just so that people know like what they'll find at that particular point. So if anyone wants to do that, that would be absolutely wonderful, because then I could add it to the video, but I just don't have time to go through it. But anyway, on that note, have a lovely rest of your evening, and we'll talk soon. Probably not that soon, but soon enough. Good night.